Majority Report with Sam Seder.
The destiny of America is always safer in the hands of the people than in the conference rooms of any elite.
Sam Seder.
They are unanimous in their hate for me, and I welcome their hatred.
We must guard against the acquisition of unwarranted influence, whether sought or unsought, by the military-industrial complex.
The Majority Report with Sam Seder.
And I get the feeling you've been cheated.
It is Thursday, January 8th, 2026. My name is Emma Vigeland, in for Sam Seder, and this is the 5-time award-winning Majority Report. We are broadcasting live steps from the industrially ravaged Gowanus Canal in the heartland of America, downtown Brooklyn, USA. On the program today, Nick Cleveland-Stout of the Quincy Institute will be with us later on to talk about big oil's influence on Washington's foreign policy infrastructure. But also on the program in Minneapolis, 1 mile from the site of George Floyd's murder, an ICE agent murdered legal observer Renee Good yesterday. A mother of 3, shooting her in the face multiple times at close range in her car. The video also shows ICE officers blocking a physician from helping her as she bleeds out. Trump administration officials rush to gaslight the public, calling Good a domestic terrorist. Thousands of people poured into the streets of Minneapolis and across the country last night. And right now, there are protests in New York City, right across the river over there, as Kristi Noem visits ICE offices here. Democratic Congresswoman Robin Kelly says she'll file articles of impeachment against Kristi Noem. Good to hear. Today, the Senate will vote on a bipartisan war powers resolution to limit Trump's military actions in Venezuela. Hopefully. However, Energy Secretary Chris Wright says the U.S. will control the country's oil sales, quote, indefinitely. John Fetterman comes out in support of purchasing Greenland. The Democrat, John Fetterman. The Trump family crypto firm World Liberty Financial applies for a banking charter with the U.S. government. What's gonna happen? I'm on pins and needles. Will World Liberty Financial get the approval from the Trump administration? The U.S. to withdraw from over 60 international agencies, mostly UN-related, because Trump says they're too woke. Kathy Hochul bends the knee, agrees to fund 2 years of Mamdani's free preschool program. And lastly, 86-year-old Steny Hoyer is retiring. Glad he got that AIPAC-sponsored 20-second trip to Israel in beforehand, but he still has an opportunity to go for a few more times. Maybe.
Yeah, take a few more.
One of the most powerful Democrats in the House for decades. All this and more on today's Majority Report. Welcome to the show, everybody. It is an Majority Report Thursday. We have a lot to get to today. Obviously, yesterday was a historic day, and not in a good way. We were able to kind of react to the breaking news at the end of the first hour yesterday, but we have more information, obviously, about the victim of the murder by the ICE agent in Minneapolis. Less than a mile around from where George Floyd was killed, was murdered by Derek Chauvin. And this woman, I should also say, hello, Brian, hello, Matt. This woman, Renee Good, was a 37-year-old U.S. citizen. She was a mother of 3 children. She had 2 children from her first marriage and another 6-year-old from her second marriage. That child will now be an orphan because the father of that child died in 2023. Renee grew up in Colorado. She moved to Minnesota fairly recently with her partner. And she and her partner were coming back from dropping off her 6-year-old at school when they ended up encountering some ICE agents. This is how her ex-husband describes her to Politico, and then we'll see how the Trump administration chooses to describe her here. But the Trump administration officials, Politico writes, painted Macklin Good as a domestic terrorist who had attempted to ram federal agents with her car. Her ex-husband said she was no activist and that he had never known her to participate in a protest of any kind. He described her as a devoted Christian who took part in youth mission trips to Northern Ireland when she was younger. She loved to sing, participating in chorus in high school, and studying vocal performance in college. She studied creative writing at Old Dominion University in Virginia and won a prize in 2020 for one of her works, according to a post on the school's English department Facebook page. She also hosted the podcast with her second husband, who died in 2023. That is who Renee Nicole Good was. Here is how the President of the United States chose to respond to this killing. In contrast, I have just viewed the clip of the event which took place in Minneapolis, Minnesota. It is a horrible thing to watch. The woman screaming was, obviously, a professional agitator, and the woman driving the car was disorderly. Now, if you see this video, you'll see that there are a number of women screaming. At one point, her wife is screaming. Her wife was outside of the car, it appears. I think they had their dog with them. And her wife was screaming out in agony after what she saw. So there was a lot of screaming happening because people just witnessed their neighbor shot in the face by an ICE officer.
And fascists were pointing guns at people before that?
So not sure which woman he's referring to, the widow of the victim or one of the witnesses to the murder. The woman screaming was obviously a professional agitator, and the woman driving the car was very disorderly, obstructing and resisting, who then violently, willfully, and viciously ran over the ICE officer, who seems to have shot her in self-defense. Based on the attached clip, it is hard to believe he is alive, but is now recovering in the hospital. What? The situation is being, every word I read, I'm in disbelief. The situation is being studied in its entirety, but the reason these incidents are happening is because of the radical left is threatening, assaulting, and targeting our law enforcement officers and ICE agents on a daily basis. They're just trying to do the job of making America safe.
Oh, sure.
Yeah, they made that American really safe when they shot her in the face multiple times. We need to stand by and protect the law enforcement, whatever. So, they're laughing at the public on this front.
This is what fascism is. And a lot of people have been pointing out that they talk like, Israelis talk about Palestinians or calling everyone terrorists. And that's true, but it's true because Israel is just an outgrowth of fascism. Yeah. It's the same thing that happened in the Jakarta Method in Indonesia, same thing that happened in Operation Condor. Fascists, when they take power, get to kill people who they decide are too far away from fascism ideologically. That's just what's happening now. It's why Jesse Waters will defend all this. It's why every sort of mentally ill streamer on the right will defend it. They'll just defend this. You can't reason with these people. We need to organize and squash them.
It's a bit trite, but to Matt's point, you have to just, when you understand fascists and this level of, how empowered they've been, you have to look back in history, and you can read the Jean-Paul Sartre quote that is still so resonant to this day. Is referring to the Nazis here, but you can refer to them as fascists in general and apply it right now to the Trump administration. Never believe that anti-Semites are completely unaware of the absurdity of their replies. They know that their remarks are frivolous, open to challenge, but they are amusing themselves. For it is their adversary who is obliged to use words responsibly, since he believes in words. The anti-Semites have the right to play. They even like to play with discourse, for, by giving ridiculous reasons, they discredit the seriousness of their interlocutors. They delight in acting in bad faith, since they seek not to persuade by sound argument, but to intimidate and disconcert. If you press them too closely, they will abruptly fall silent, loftily indicating by some phrase that the time for argument is past. And that is exactly what Trump and Stephen Miller and Kristi Noem are engaging in here. And I've spoken about how, I feel that Trump is a bit of a surrogate or a proxy for reactionary feelings of empowerment by for his base. Often those are along lines of white supremacy or misogyny or homophobia or transphobia or xenophobia. When Trump gets to say slurs and lie with impunity, there's a thrill to them because there's a vicarious experience for a population that feels aggrieved and disempowered. And in many ways, the American population is deeply disempowered, but that's not just MAGA, that's across the board. And what Trump has provided for the population and for them is a circus. And the Democrats have abandoned populist material messaging to such a degree that violence as a catharsis for these fascists and for the MAGA base is basically that's all that's being offered that's visible. And so
people can't buy houses and rich people are as rich as ever. And the Democrats think like we need to work with them on abundance.
Right. Or on, there's yesterday Chuck Schumer was hugging Marco Rubio in front of the press. The opposition leader.
I missed this.
Yeah, go to Ken Klippenstein's feed if you want to get your heart monitor up there, Matt. And we have it in the sound sheet. Maybe we'll show it later. But we've also talked about how Trump's followers kind of transpose this like evangelical religious framework onto him, and how they're primed to do so in many ways because he takes the form of a televangelist at a megachurch. It's why it's like the arguments about his lack of morality, the arguments about his philandering, and I mean, we know he's like a predator as well, didn't land because he represented like this authority figure because of his wealth, his celebrity, and like just decades of prosperity gospel brainwashing for that base. So if Trump is this godlike figure, then the ICE agents in that framework basically act as agents of his, of God Trump's divine will. Like they're executing his judgment against all of the enemies of the MAGA base, which includes leftists, immigrants, Muslims, Somalis, what have you. It is all about like that kind of it is set up as a religiously motivated political movement. It's a Christian nationalist movement at its heart is really what I'm getting at here. And when you see them deny the reality that we all saw in that video, it's because they are operating from a place of blind faith, and they are operating within that framework, or they're completely insincere and just fascists. But it's one of the two.
This picture, I mean, he said he's disappointed in Marco Rubio or whatever. This is just two fascists. This is a Christian fascist and a Zionist fascist.
Go to the second one. Exactly. Go to the second one where they're legit hugging. Yeah.
I mean, we don't. This is our government, and both parties are occupied at the top by fascists. So listen to Chuck Schumer just a year ago talk about what he viewed his role is, which is to keep the left pro-Israel.
Yeah.
And we wonder why this is continuing. I mean, half of these people. I mean, Debbie Wasserman Schultz, Chantel Brown. I looked at the list of all the Democrats that thanked ICE for their beautiful service to the nation last summer. There are people in the progressive caucus.
I mean, but you can, that Venn diagram is going to overlap
that took Israel money
with who took Israel money.
So they shouldn't be allowed in there. Purge them from the progressive caucus. It's time to address this shit. I mean, everyone says it's not the time. The time was yesterday for all of this.
Right. I was talking with somebody last night, another colleague in the space, and they were like, is it too late? Like, could this have have we gone too far, basically? This purge needed to happen before that, to your point, to build up the opposition party. But when you look at history, this is how fascist governments rise, is you have a weak centrist opposition that is unable to meet the moment. And it's very much echoing in our ears at this moment. And so, like, when you look at the right's reaction, you have those two buckets. You've got the followers who treat this as, like, you know, an act of faith, essentially, and the fascists who get the thrill out of lying. And those groups are sometimes not entirely distinct, but that's what we're looking at right here. And so, you know, I mentioned earlier that I happened upon that video of Renee Good's wife crying. And as soon as I saw she had a pride flag in her bio, as soon as I saw that she was in a relationship with a woman, I knew immediately what the right was going to run with. And you know what all the Twitter Nazi bots were going to run with, because they rev up that engine really quickly. And I tweeted out the GoFundMe for her wife and son. We can maybe put that in the description as well. And of course, the immediate Nazi bots on Twitter, that's what they've decided on, is they're going to go with homophobia. But we don't need Nazi bots on Twitter to do so, because we have primetime Jesse Waters to run with it as well.
The woman who lost her life was a self-proclaimed poet from Colorado, with pronouns in her bio. A 37-year-old white woman named Renee Good. The Daily Mail says she leaves behind a lesbian partner and a child from a previous marriage. She was a disruptor, though she considered herself a legal observer. But there's no evidence she had a law degree.
That's not what a legal observer is, you dummy.
Ryan Grimm showed the world how to deal with Jesse Waters, and people can Google that, and I won't say anything more.
Yeah, they've got there's nothing about the facts here that will change the minds of the base of this party at this point. They have decided that this is some sort of, you know, almost like religiously ordained war between good and evil. And that's why I bring up the evangelical framework, is because now we can slide her into this bucket because she was in a relationship with a woman. I know, of course, immediately you see that the discrediting of her on that basis. It's really disgusting. And, you know, as we talked about trans people being canaries in the coal mine, and that, of course, they're going to come for Obergefell and gay marriage and LGBTQ rights more broadly in general on that basis, that is what is going to happen. I mean, I would not be shocked if this is how the right reacts, finding a hook as a way to make her into one of the political enemies that they can completely remove their humanity from.
I mean, this is why we had a problem, and it got us accused of being max left by other commentators, with playing footsie with the right on this stuff, and acting as if, if you just scratch below the surface, they secretly want Medicare for all. No, the organized right, the like hard right on this country that turns out for this sort of stuff, they didn't just want mass deportations. Those people will support, and I am not exaggerating, they will support death camps. For gay people, for immigrants, they will support it. Just like the Nazis did in Germany. It's the same fucking people.
They support concentration camps right now.
Right now. How many deaths have happened in
ICE custody? Over 50 this last year.
It could be 50,000. You wouldn't hear anything different from the people that supported it.
Right. Because of really the mentality that we were just outlining here. This is a movement based on domination, based on racism, and it's not motivated by the realities of policy. It's a fascist movement.
The policy is kill people until the conditions improve.
Exactly. Where have we heard that before? A word from one of our sponsors, and then we're going to be talking more about this story. This episode of the Majority Report was brought to you by Wild Grain. Wild Grain is the first bake from frozen subscription box for artisanal breads, seasonal pastries, and fresh pastas. And like Sam, I cannot get through this ad read without my mouth watering. It's already starting here. All of these items conveniently bake in 25 minutes or less. Oh, I got this incredible, like, French, I'm probably not describing it correctly, but it's one of those long breads that twists like a pretzel, and you just put it in your freezer, and then you can bake it really quickly, and it tasted like it was fresh. Like you got it from some artisanal kind of bread store. They also had these pumpkin muffins that were phenomenal. Really enjoyed basically everything in the Wild Grain box that I got. Unlike many store-bought options, Wild Grain uses simple ingredients you can pronounce and a slow fermentation process that can be easier on your belly and richer in nutrients and antioxidants. There are no preservatives and no shortcuts. Wild Grain's boxes are fully customizable. In addition to their variety box, they have a gluten-free box, vegan box, and a new protein box. As I mentioned, I loved that bread, loved those pumpkin muffins, and it was the sourdough that I really loved. Sourdough is good, and it was incredibly convenient too. I didn't get into that trend of making it myself during COVID. It's not really my thing, and that's why Wild Grain is perfect for me, because it's a very convenient delivery system. They just ship it right to you and bake under 25 minutes. And when you're feeling like, oh, I'm a little hungry, maybe I order in, Wild Grain saves you that. You can just have it in your freezer, and then boom, under 25 minutes, you've got some fresh, cozy bread, keeping you warm in the cold weather. There's nothing like having an artisan bakery in your freezer to chase away the winter chill. Now is the best time to stay in and enjoy comforting homemade meals with Wild Grain. I highly recommend giving Wild Grain a try. Right now, Wild Grain is offering our audience $30 off your first box, plus free croissants for life when you go to wildgrain.com/majority to start your subscription today. That's $30 off your first box and free croissants for life when you visit wildgrain.com/majority, or you can use promo code majority at checkout. Get $30 off your first box and free croissants in every box. Go to wildgrain.com/majority to start your subscription. Link down below in the video and episode descriptions and at majority.fm. All right. So let's break down some of the lies from this administration on the murder that we witnessed yesterday, the ICE murdering Renee Good. This is just hours after the shooting. You saw that there was an ICE statement that we read on air. I think this was right before or right around the full video came out. The rush to get ahead of the story is immensely telling, defining the narrative. They attempted to do so. The problem is that for them is that we have two eyes. Some of us. Yeah,
I mean, this is the phrase "rush to judgment" actually comes from the JFK assassination, and that was a different media environment than the one we have now. We have a different where things could, like, you have newspapers and it takes a long time for information. Now it's so fast that the right has realized that, just lie. Like what you saw with the Charlie Kirk thing, just throw out initial information. There's all these shootings that they initially blame on trans people. Get out there, and because you need to actually mess the judgment up for everybody, and say, like, again, the shooting in Minnesota earlier that they blamed on folks, like, they'll just say things.
Kristi Noem said this like just hours after the shooting. This was the press conference where she claims once again that Renee Good was committing an act of domestic terrorism.
Questions there. You asked about a shooting that we just had in Minneapolis, Minnesota. It was an act of domestic terrorism. What happened was our ICE officers were out in an enforcement action. They got stuck in the snow because of the adverse weather that is in Minneapolis. They were attempting to push out their vehicle, and a woman attacked them and those surrounding them and attempted to run them over and ram them with her vehicle. An officer of ours acted quickly and defensively shot to protect himself and the people around him, And my understanding is that she was hit and is deceased. We're continuing to gather more information, but this goes to show the assaults that our ICE officers and our law enforcement are under every single day. These vehicle rammings are domestic acts of terrorism. We're working with the Department of Justice to prosecute them as such. We will continue to protect our ICE officers and in cooperation with other law enforcement agencies as well. You've seen me in the last couple of days deploy over 2,000 more officers to the Minneapolis area. And in the last 2 days, we've...
Okay. We'll break down those lies, but should be noted that this is the excuse that they are now running with, and it isn't just in the ICE murder of Renee Good. The New York Times has this from yesterday. In the last 4 months alone, this is number 12, immigration officers have fired on at least 9 people in 5 states and Washington, D.C. All of the individuals targeted in those shootings were, like the woman killed on Wednesday, fired on while in their vehicles. In each case, officials have claimed that the agents fired in self-defense, fearing they would be struck by the vehicle. At least 1 person died as a result of those shootings. They also list some of these other examples that have gotten less attention. A Mexican immigrant named Silverio Villegas Gonzalez was shot outside of Chicago. The Homeland Security officials claimed that he had hit and dragged one of their officers with his car, and that the officer who shot him was acting in self-defense, but a Times analysis of video calls into question key aspects of the government's account. Shocking. They also talk about this Mexican man living in Los Angeles named Carlitos Ricardo Parias. I'm sorry again if I'm butchering the pronunciation. Federal officials said he tried to ram officers as he fled the scene, and Homeland Security officers fired shots, hitting the man in the elbow. A federal marshal was struck in the hand by a ricocheted bullet. And there's more examples of this as well. So the point is just that there are Good Samaritans. There are people who are being racially profiled in their cars, who are having these interactions with ICE. And if there is any violence that the Gestapo inflicts upon these Americans and these human beings, the claim is going to be that they were trying to use their car as a weapon, so we were justified in using our actual weapon in killing them or shooting at them. So, you know, just to be like, they have tried to use this repeatedly, this excuse, over and over in these instances.
Oh, it goes beyond this and it's probable cause. A judge has already said, one of the judges that said, hey, they're just lying to us. When we actually go back and review this body cam footage, or the footage that they send us, supposedly showing people threatening them with their cars, it turns out that it's these ICE convoys that are driving erratically. And the judge suggests that they're doing so in order to have an accident, so they have a reason to take action against people. Like, that's insane.
Yeah, and there was a CNN contributor that went on there last night, one of their legal contributors. I'm trying to find it, but essentially he went through the Department of Homeland Security guidelines, and you are not supposed to be shooting into a car. It says it so explicitly. So even by the own DHS charter, they have violated the rules. And I love that the excuse is adverse weather in Minneapolis in January. They're upset about the snow. I mean, it's not like it was snowing. We saw that it was an incredibly clear day.
Yeah.
This is an eyewitness here, number 7. Aaron Burnett interviewed her. Her name is Emily Heller. And she says exactly what she saw, discrediting the lies from the federal government. Or I should more accurately say, the White House and the Trump administration and Republicans.
What's your response to that version of events? I mean, that's the only reason why I'm here. I don't think I'm the most articulate person. I don't think that I don't want to be here, but I knew that this would be twisted and it would be self-defense, and that's absolutely not what happened. But it's just my life is forever changed from having witnessed this, and I just can't let this narrative that it was self-defense go any further, because it's absolutely not what it was. And my neighborhood, my neighbors, we're all going to be pretty traumatized from this for a long time.
When in that video that you shared with us that I just played, the 34 seconds, you know, you're obviously incredibly distraught, and there's a doctor next to you or near you. We can, you know, hear him saying, "I'm a physician. I can help," and they say, "No, we have our own medics." But the doctor is there offering to administer CPR, standing right there. I don't want you to have to relive what you were looking at when the horror of her death, but how did agents respond to him? Was there a speed and a desperation in trying to get any sort of assistance to her? Because it didn't sound like that from what you gave us.
Yeah, they wouldn't let him near, and they said they had their own medics that were on their way, which
murder.
It was, I mean, I don't know. It was at least 15 minutes before the ambulance arrived, and then the ambulance couldn't even get through because the ICE agents had all abandoned their vehicles in the road, so the ambulance couldn't get through. So they parked at the end of the block, and about 5 paramedics came in and examined her for, I didn't see this, but they were with her for a few minutes, and then they carried her limp body away by her limbs, not even on a stretcher. Just carried her down to the end of the block where they could get a stretcher because they couldn't get through with their ambulance.
We can't show that video because you can see her lifeless body and the blood in the background, but there is somebody who is shouting that they are a physician and that they want to get through to help, and ICE agents say that they don't care and refuse to allow that to happen. Murderers. I mean, they need to be arrested, and it's nice for Jacob Fry and Tim Walz to talk about things. You need to push this to a constitutional crisis. If Trump's going to overrule any action you take against them, you need to let him do that. You need to take some kind of official action. It appears like ICE was attempting to get him out of Minnesota state lines for that very reason, because while, yes, if he were brought on federal charges, which is not happening under the Trump administration anyway, yes, Trump would be able to pardon him, but not state charges. So this is where we have to see leadership from state attorneys general and state governors, obviously, and mayors and local leadership. This is essential. They cannot allow the federal government to Bigfoot this investigation here. It has to be locally controlled in a very tightly controlled manner. You have to assert some kind of authority over this, and if it's going to be overruled, then you have to let it be overruled. And I mentioned that thing about the line 404 Media. DHS is lying to you. A great thing. U.S. District Judge Sarah Ellis wrote more than a 200-page opinion that in large part cataloged DHS's official bullshit. Parts of the opinion were scathing. Here's another one. DHS shared a video the court believed was an attempt to show agents constantly face danger from cars ramming them on purpose. Instead, it, quote, suggests that the agent drove erratically and brake-checked other motorists in an attempt to force accidents that agents could then use as justifications for deploying force. That is fucking insane. And officials have to act on that. It's a public safety crisis. If you're about protecting your citizenry, that even if you're the fascist that loves seeing brown people rounded up by ICE, they are causing accidents in your community as a pretext for further crackdowns, because these ICE agents, some of them, you're reading about, have rap sheets. They haven't gotten any real training. The fat ass pig that killed her was looked out of shape. I'm sorry to be body shaming here, but we're talking about the fascists that came up off the street and are getting a thrill out of this. Who knows what they're doing before, what drugs they're doing. You just got to read Seth Harp's work to know that there's a lot of crap that happens when people feel like they have total impunity and they're all jacked up, getting ready to shoot a woman in the face. We have no transparency here. We should know this guy's identity right now, and we still do not. But let's go through these freeze frames here, just to make sure that we have our bases covered. These are the specific moments when the ICE agent draws and fires his pistol 3 times, killing the woman. We'll pull up each of these images here. You see he's drawing it as the car is turning in front of him. We don't have this video, but before this, he goes behind her car and around it as she's kind of slowly turning. There is another video of her waving another car in front of her to show that she was trying to leave. Because also, it appears like the ICE agents were giving her contradictory information. One was about saying getting out of the car. One was saying leave. And it appears that she was trying to leave. Okay, so here he draws his gun. Now, the car is turning.
You can see the wheel pointed away from him, going down, ready to go down the street.
Right. This is where the first shot is fired. You can see both of his feet, and you see the front wheel is not hitting him. It's not hitting his feet. So
it's
unless
pointed away from him.
And there is a gap between his torso. We can't see it fully because there's another thug that's chasing after the car. But you can see that there is space in between the vehicle and that far officer as the shot is fired. Now, third freeze frame here. This is when he shoots her again. Like, I mean, at least 2 feet in between him and the car, but he's already hit her at this point.
Anyone at this point arguing that he is in self-defense is just a Nazi that wants like the government to be able to kill people.
And the Nazis' lie is also here that they talk about how her car accelerated at this point. We'll do the final fourth. You know why the car accelerated? Because she's dead. She fell forward, almost certainly. This happens in any car chase in a movie that you've ever seen, and they're pretending like as she's turning here, she was trying to accelerate towards the officer.
It's why, even not to give them too much credit, but trained officers don't shoot people that are operating a fucking giant vehicle.
And that's why that was supposedly DHS policy. So you can see this is the shot here where she is driving away, and as we said, as we reacted to this live, he's chasing he is shooting her. It seems like either he's parallel to the driver's side at this point, or turning his body to continue shooting her as she drives away and eventually hits into something, because by this point, I'm sure she's already dead. So there's nothing in dispute here. But, you know, with George Floyd, they had their laboratory for excuses too. They had their he had drugs in his system. It wasn't the fact that this cop was on his neck for multiple minutes, and we all saw the video of him being slowly asphyxiated and killed. Yeah. It couldn't be that. No, it's some other reason, and I'm sure they'll figure out a way to blame her in some way, and it'll likely be on homophobic grounds, as I mentioned. So, you know.
They killed a mom.
They killed a mom. And lastly on this, this is an outgrowth of the war on terror and a multi-decade at this point policy of cementing a security state. That involved the creation of the Department of Homeland Security. I didn't remember that was actually a Lieberman push to make it about the homeland. I was seeing people discussing that.
Big supporter of Israel, Joe Lieberman.
Right. Well, I mean, you know, and someone made a great point, like that homeland is supposed to be a place that you like return to, and that you're estranged from. It sounds very Zionist.
It's blood and soil shit.
But there you go. Right. Joe, the most conservative Democrat, one of the most conservative Democrats at the time, using fascistic blood and soil type imagery to refer to the United States. It is the erasure of our indigenous genocide of Native Americans here, in the same way that referring to Israel as the homeland is an erasure of the genocide of Palestinians as well. Like, you see how these things work towards the same ends. And prior to 9/11, there was no Department of Homeland Security. There was no ICE. We protected our borders pretty well prior to 9/11. Immigration enforcement and the security state that is a part of is an outgrowth of the war on terror. We can abolish ICE tomorrow. We can. And we can reallocate those funds to a more humane immigration system. ICE isn't even old enough to rent a car right now.
ICE is turning their vision away from sex traffickers and towards kitchens, so they and
yeah, and
so the idea this is keeping us safe is a joke.
But I just mean like when you have people act like this is so intractable, it is important to remind folks that ICE is I think like 23, 22 years old. These are choices. And they can easily be reversed. If Trump can take us back, 50 years or something like that, we can reverse and build something's better too, as well. And there's always the canary in the coal mine. And at the start of the 21st century, it was Muslim people in this country. They bore the brunt of the fascist security state first. And a lot of people stayed quiet. And then it kept going. Well, and then Islamophobia became central to justifying our foreign policy abroad, but also our domestic policy of mass surveillance. That's how it was justified on these grounds. And so you have the imperial boomerang in action right here. The war on terror and the security state being justified to support that, securing financial interests abroad in that region, staving on, participating in great power competition over resources. And then if that is the case, immigration and immigration enforcement here is also about securing those same interests domestically. It's in part, there's the Nazi fascist part, yes, but there's also the overarching power interests here are about creating a population of folks with sub-citizen status who live in fear, who don't have the ability to stand up to their boss, to power. They are a sub-citizen labor force. That's how they're essentially treated. That can be easily exploited and enrich the same people that put the surveillance state in place.
The media that spent the last few years talking about Israel's as a right to defend itself will not be much better at talking about this American government killing your neighbor. It will it'll fall for the same fucking shit. And it's nice to it's very maybe it'll be moderately better. It's nice to see Graham Plattner on Morning Joe this morning.
Nice, yeah.
Maybe we can play some of that later. But there will be plenty of people, including at CNN, that will have to say, well, maybe we got to hear both sides, especially the higher you get in these organizations. You have to hear both sides. I mean, Tony Dokapil, I see already doing fluff pieces with ICE agents. So there is an apparatus here to normalize this death and allow it to continue, and we need to fight against it.
Absolutely. All right, folks, quick break, and when we come back, we're going to be talking to Nick Cleveland-Stout about some of his work at the Quincy Institute tracking DC think tanks and why they might be a little bit more invested in plundering Venezuela for its oil than they should be because of some financial ties. We'll be right back. We are back, and we are joined now by Nick Cleveland-Stout, Research Associate in the Democratizing Foreign Policy program at the Quincy Institute for Responsible Statecraft. Nick, thanks so much for coming on the show.
Hey, great to be here with you, Emma.
So glad you were able to join us because last year I saw this. I think it was last year. You funded the think tank funding tracker, where you've been looking at DC's think tanks, foreign policy think tanks, and where they actually get their money from. Maybe we can start from really the basics here. What's a think tank for the audience that may not be fully aware?
Yeah, so especially for the folks outside of DC, think tanks are almost impossible to ignore when it comes to U.S. foreign policy. They are oftentimes the experts that get called up by journalists for quotes. They oftentimes testify to Congress. They oftentimes will write laws themselves. So they serve as this kind of like intermediary oftentimes between the legislative process and the American people or the media or even academia. They produce research, hot takes, all kinds of things. And I should say I work at a think tank. So I have an interest in think tanks being as for the people as possible. And one of the things, though, that we know is that think tanks present themselves as these very kind of objective research organizations that are, purely working in favor of the national interest. And while they might believe that, it's also true that a lot of them take funding from corporate sources, foreign governments. So we wanted to kind of like look under the hood. New York Times did a long investigation into think tank funding about over 10 years ago now. And so no one really touched it since then. And so we wanted to create a living database where folks can kind of go in and check out what sorts of conflicts of interest exist at a lot of these think tanks.
And I want to get to the big oil piece in just a bit, because that's very operative right now as it relates to Venezuela policy. But, you see just on your tracker, these think tanks, top 10 think tanks that receive funding from foreign governments, top 10 think tanks that receive funding from Pentagon contractors. Like these are the incentives, and this is the laboratory where foreign policy kind of gets written. And you'll have, say, secretaries of state that go join think tanks after they leave service, or other members of the blob, as it were, or they'll start a think tank, then come back into the federal government. Can you talk just about the biggest ones and where some of those funding sources are coming from broadly?
Definitely, yeah. So some of the biggest think tanks include the Atlantic Council. The Atlantic Council comes in at number 1 in our tracker as taking the most funding from both Pentagon contractors and foreign governments. Then you've also got the Center for Strategic and International Studies. They're a very prestigious think tank. They're actually the think tank that testifies to Congress way more than any other think tank. You've also got Brookings taking a significant amount of money from these sources. And kind of by the numbers, to give people a sense, we looked at the last 5 years and found that donors from foreign governments gave $110 million to these think tanks. And Pentagon contractors, meanwhile, gave $35 million to think tanks. Wow. And, they're not just giving this kind of money out of the goodness of their hearts. They have an intent. They want to get something out of it. And it's this kind of game where, think tanks, on the other hand, they want to signal a certain kind of independence from these donors. But, there are even like built-in ways in which these donors can get influence. CSIS, for instance, says that in some cases, like if you take a good close look at their policy, like they even say that there are cases in which they would accept donor recommendations for their research agenda. So, it's
donor
really
recommendations.
A pay-to-play
Meaning, I love that coded language. A donor recommendations for what we'll research, for what we'll work on. And I wonder what that donor is going to suggest. It might be something in their interest. Like, in terms of those foreign government donors, who's the number one culprit? I mean, is it Israel?
It's actually there are plenty from the Middle East, but it's actually, and Israel. We know that Israel is funding think tanks, and plenty of think tanks also have anonymous donors. So Israel is actually kind of hard to pin down when it comes.
Well, they
to
don't register as a foreign lobbyist now, right? Exactly. So they can kind of do. They're subterranean a bit.
Totally, and there was this report from The Guardian last year which revealed that they had even considered creating and funding a think tank of their own, which would have been probably entirely funded by the government of Israel. But they said that they didn't want to do it because they were worried that they would have to register under the Foreign Agents Registration Act, and that their credibility would be hurt as a think tank, which is an important point when it comes to these think tanks, is that they are not seen as lobbyists. If you're a lobbyist in DC, if you're a corporate lobbyist, you have to file certain things. If you're a foreign lobbyist, you have to file even more things about what you're doing. But think tanks have been able to skate by without really registering under the Foreign Agents Registration Act, despite taking a lot of foreign government interest. And also, I should say they definitely don't have to register under the Lobbying Disclosure Act, which is kind of the domestic lobbying framework. So they are not seen as lobbyists. So when think tankers advise members of Congress, even though they might be representing the sympathetic interests of their donors, they don't come across that way. They're seen as these objective, independent analysts.
And so I guess the Atlantic Council and others, what did you find about big oil and their influence right now over Venezuela policy? It doesn't need to just be the Atlantic Council, but it's notable how much money they take. There's a lot of influence peddling and a lot of drive, and there has been for decades, to get involved in Venezuela, to be more hawkish towards Venezuela. And a lot of people might be wondering where that comes from. And in many ways, it's this think tank apparatus that takes all of this money.
Totally. I mean, the Trump administration has been menacing Venezuela for months now, bombing boats since September. There have obviously been plenty of threats towards Venezuela, in the first Trump administration, sanctions, all these kinds of things. And throughout a lot of that, these think tanks have been cheerleading the most maximalist positions of regime change possible, oftentimes. And so, you see like fellows at the Atlantic Council, which takes $1 million from Chevron per year, and actually even has a terrace in their new building called the Chevron Terrace, promoting a lot of this stuff. And they also take a significant amount of funding from Exxon, between $250,000 and $500,000 per year. And, they even had one of their fellows, Matthew Kroenig, publishing an op-ed in the New York Times very recently, 2 days ago, making the case that ousting Maduro was a good thing, talking about how great this U.S. military operation was, how great it is that Maduro is gone. And of course, a lot of this kind of analysis benefits the very same donors that give to the Atlantic Council, whether it's Chevron, Exxon, or even the defense contractors, right? This was a big win for the defense contractors. Their stocks are all going up significantly. And Kroenig, this Atlantic Council fellow, he gives a lot of space in this op-ed to talk about how great it was, how great of a military operation it was. And, none of that really goes disclosed in the pages of the New York Times, and oftentimes in the analysis that these think tanks provide on their website. And, I should say, like, the Atlantic Council is actually relatively transparent about their funding sources. If you look at a lot of other think tanks that receive funding from these sources that we know from, investigative reporting and whatnot, they don't disclose anything about who they get funding from. Like, we know, for instance, that the American Enterprise Institute is a longtime recipient of Exxon and Exxon funding, dating, I think since the 90s, and a lot of it's towards, climate change denialism. But, there's competing interests here, right? And AEI doesn't disclose anything about its funders. We just know that because Exxon and Chevron disclose their giving reports or whatever they call it, and mention AEI as a recipient.
Let's pull up this chart you tweeted out here, because it gives us a visual, a bigger picture of what we're looking at here. Looking at these think tanks and Chevron and Exxon specifically. You put this together a few months ago, and this is just about the donations that Chevron and Exxon have made to these specific think tanks. You got the Atlantic Council, we mentioned there, the over 1 million from Chevron, but you got Aspen Institute, Brookings, Carnegie. I mean, that's a little bit less money, but the Heritage Foundation, undisclosed. How is this able to be undisclosed? That's another question, I guess, here. And the Council on Foreign Relations, that's a little bit shocking to me. Center for Strategic and International Studies, over $250K from both. What's your read on this chart here? And can you explain why the Heritage Foundation isn't disclosing their funding here at all?
Yeah, I mean, there's a few things happening. If you look at that chart, for instance, one of the things that jumps out is we don't have exact numbers, and a lot of that is by design. Like if you look at the, Atlantic Council, for instance, says $1 million plus for Chevron. Council on Foreign Relations says 100,000 plus for Chevron and Exxon. That could mean $1 million in the case of Chevron's donations to the Atlantic Council, or it could mean 10 million per year. And we have no way of knowing because there really, there's no law that requires think tanks, which are 501c3 nonprofits, to disclose their funding sources. And it's the same for foreign government donations to these think tanks. Think tanks have this kind of academic, research exemption, and which exempts them from FARA, and they don't have to disclose their corporate donors either. There's kind of a trend, if you want a certain degree of prestige, that you would donate, that you would disclose some of your donors. And so that's kind of what's happening in the case of those ones that disclose the names of their donors, but not the amounts. Like I think you mentioned Heritage, for example. They don't really mention how much Exxon or Chevron gives to them, but we know that those are two donors.
And can you explain specifically Exxon and Chevron's interests in Venezuela? We've talked a bit about it on the show, but I'm curious about your perspective.
It's a super interesting question, because over the last few days, there's been a lot of back and forth around, what exactly are the U.S. oil majors' interests in Venezuela. It definitely, I should say, it's definitely been the case that the Trump administration has been leading this charge. It's not really come from the think tanks, although a lot of think tanks might cheerlead what the Trump administration is doing. But in the mid-2000s is kind of the important starting point here for the oil majors in Venezuela. There was a big round of nationalization. Exxon and ConocoPhillips both left the country and then demanded that Venezuela give money to them for expropriating their assets in Venezuela. They're still demanding that money to this day. ConocoPhillips is demanding somewhere in the ballpark of $10 billion from Venezuela. Exxon less, around $1.6 billion. Chevron is kind of an interesting one because they decided to stay in Venezuela. They're the kind of boots on the ground. And these three companies, Chevron, Exxon, and ConocoPhillips, are the three companies that would be expected to play a very big role in whatever the Trump administration has planned for Venezuela going forward. Trump is meeting with the executives from some of these companies tomorrow. And we're getting a slow trickle, or a dump, actually, I should say, of information about what the buildup of U.S. oil infrastructure in Venezuela is going to look like. And yeah.
Well, I mean, it feels like when you read about the amount of infrastructure and investment that's going to be necessary, this is going to be really costly. And you wonder if they're meeting with the Trump administration, if they're like, hey, you're all about the oil, I guess. This is what he cares about. And it doesn't, I think a guy like Rubio always wanted regime change in Venezuela, and whatever Trump is fixated on is good enough for him. But the oil executives might be playing that same game here where it's like, we can probably convince this kind of fascist guy who's really interested in the state merging with some of these corporate interests to subsidize our infrastructure efforts in Venezuela because it's going to be very costly for them.
Totally. They're looking to get the most out of this situation. And, people have made a lot about this, about how they're, we don't quite know what the oil companies want, what their interests here are. It's heavy crude, which is less valuable than lighter crude oil. And but I think they're playing coy because they, like you said, they want to get the most out of this situation. And of course, there's been a lot of underinvestment in Venezuela's infrastructure. But the Trump administration seems very committed to making this a good deal for the oil companies. So I certainly wouldn't bet against them. I mean, he's even suggested like reimbursing them not only for what they would invest in rebuilding Venezuela's oil infrastructure, which some estimates I've seen could be $100 billion over the next 10 years, but he's even suggested reimbursing them for the seized assets during that nationalization period, which if you're the ConocoPhillips executive or Exxon executive, Darren Woods, you're sitting there, then that's music to your ears. Like if you're considering whether to go back into the country or not. And, there's a lot that we still don't know. A bunch of U.S. senators have sent letters to the CEOs of these oil companies asking them, basically what the heck is going on, because Congress is being left in the dark on this military operation. But supposedly, Trump is saying that he briefed the oil executives. And, it seems like they may have been more involved in a lot of this operation than previously known. Their Politico's reported that they were briefed on kind of post-operation reinvestment, as much as 10 days before the operation. And so, I wouldn't bet against these oil majors, even as their stock kind of goes up and down as people are concerned about, the fact that it is heavy crude, the fact that it could affect the price of oil. But yeah, it's definitely something to watch.
Trump has said that he wants to increase the military budget from $1 trillion to $1.5 trillion next year. Another insane explosion. The $1 trillion budget blew past. The military budget increases year over year, budget over budget, a lot, but they're usually a little bit more coy about this. This was like the largest percentage increase in years, and this would dwarf that. I wouldn't be shocked if that is some of what he has in mind, subsidizing almost directly, perhaps, investment in Venezuela to the benefit of oil executives who can basically, at that point, double their money.
And the only way to interpret that Truth Social post, too, is that he is high on militarism right now. He sees the success. What he sees is the success of this operation in Venezuela. I think I would throw some caution on that in that, there's a lot that we don't know yet. We don't know what's going to play out. Delcy Rodriguez, the now acting vice president, has to walk this very tight rope. But he sees this as a huge success, right? And he's already looking to Greenland, to Cuba, to Iran. And, he is realizing where militarism can take you. And he is already saying that he wants this $1.5 trillion budget, which I should point out, $500 billion increase. That $500 billion figure is already larger of a defense budget than every other country on Earth, including China. And so this would be a massive increase. You're already seeing, by the way, the chairs of the House Armed Services Committee and the Senate Armed Services Committee saying that this is great. We're so excited. We're happy about this increase. So, a lot of it is just like throwing things at the wall and seeing what's going to stick. And I think this is another example of that. I think a lot of his tweets about, basically describing Venezuela as a U.S. protectorate is also part of that in an effort to coerce Delcy Rodriguez. But he is certainly high on militarism right now.
There's another figure I want to ask you about, Paul Singer. And just returning to the think tank piece, I mean, he's been a donor to the Manhattan Institute, which is a conservative think tank that has been supporting regime change in Venezuela. He has, like, just a name is very central in this. Major MAGA donor, donated millions to his reelection effort in 2024 and to Republicans broadly in 2024. And prior to that, I think he was pretty cozy with Marco Rubio back when Rubio was running in 2016 as a GOP political donor kind of power player. What's his interest in Venezuela, and why is he kind of named as the guy who stands to benefit the most here?
Yeah, I'm glad you brought this up, because this is another example of someone who's donated a lot of money. I think he's given $1.3 million to the Manhattan Institute, and he's a donor to other think tanks. But to the Manhattan Institute, and there you have a think tank that's oftentimes promoting the interests of this donor. And Manhattan also has taken a ton of money from Exxon and other oil companies. But yeah, I mean, Paul Singer, he's a major Rubio and Trump ally. He's given $5 million to Trump's super PAC. He's one of these. He's what's described as kind of a vulture capitalist. He buys up distressed assets and tries to turn them into something after the sale of these distressed assets are sold from developing countries. And he did that with Citgo, which is the subsidiary of PDVSA that owns refineries across the U.S., 3 major refineries on the Gulf Coast. And it can refine some 800,000 barrels of oil per day, which is about how much Venezuela is producing in oil currently, or as of late last year. And so he stands to benefit a lot. He bought Citgo for just $6 billion, which is pennies on the dollar in what he could get. He goes back a long time with Rubio. He endorsed Rubio's 2016 campaign. Rubio even helped pressure Argentina into paying this $4.6 billion payment to Singer and other creditors to settle some debt that they had bought. So he's a good friend of Rubio, a good friend of Trump, and another major donor to a lot of these think tanks. So he stands to gain a lot from all of this.
Well, I'd really encourage people to check out all of what the Quincy Institute does and the tracker itself, the think tank funding tracker. We'll put a link to your latest piece on what risk big investors jockeying for potential Venezuela oil rush in Responsible Statecraft, and also your think tank funding tracker down below. Nick, thanks so much for your time today. I really appreciate it.
Thanks so much for having me on.
Of course. All right, with that, folks, we are going to wrap up the free part of this show, head into the fun half of this show, where we'll read your IMs. Perhaps we'll take some calls. We shall see. Matt, what's happening on Left Reckoning and with Jacobin?
Yeah, Left Reckoning, Nick Estes and Jose Luis Granados talking about Venezuela on Tuesday. Go check that episode out. Great talking to those guys on 2 different perspectives on it. And tomorrow, Ryan Grimm talking about just some stuff happening in the news recently.
Oh,
so probably talk on that. So tomorrow, Jacobin Show, 10 a.m. Eastern time.
All right. We're bringing in Brandon here. There he is. While we bring him up, we will read some IMs. Brennan in Petaluma. ICE seems reluctant to invade any state with stand your ground laws. If they did, I'm pretty sure we'd see some of these thugs getting their asses shot as well. Well, yeah.
I don't know about that.
Yeah, I don't know.
I don't know about that. I mean, they were in Tennessee, right? I don't know what the gun laws are, and
yeah,
like
Louisiana, they also did some action. Yeah.
But I do think like this people need to do lots of different forms of organizing their communities to stop this, because I don't think telling them to just get the fuck out of the city. Like, you're going to need to we're going to need to prosecute these people. These sorts of threats need to be real.
Yep. Hey, Brandon, how are you?
I'm doing all right. How are you doing, Emma?
I am doing all right. What is happening on the discourse?
Well, I mean, every day, Monday through Friday, 9 a.m. to 12 p.m. Eastern, we're just chopping it up. We're just covering the news. So you can go over to the YouTube channel, The Discourse with Brandon, to just see what's up. We have so many clips up now. It feels crazy.
Oh, yeah?
Yeah.
Big expansion into YouTube. I saw you talk about the Hat Boys, the Tim Pool, the hat guys sitting in for Tim Pool.
I just don't get it. Like, is it like a thing I don't understand about the show where they have to wear hats and I'm just being like, oh, like part of the branding, or is it
As
just
somebody like there was a period of time where I wore a hat on camera like regular, like 3 or 4 years ago. And I think it just becomes a crutch. Like and for me, I stopped wearing it because people said I was going bald. I'm like, no, I'm not. I'll take my hat off. You keep saying that.
Wow, peer pressure. But I will say one thing that we will be covering, and I don't know if you are up to date on this too, is that Bongino is going to be coming back to Rumble very soon, because obviously his tenure as the deputy director of the FBI has come to an end, and people keep saying that he lasted a year. That's not what happened. It was way less than a year.
Yeah.
Just by nature of when Trump even became president, was like inaugurated. It can't have been a year, but whatever.
He sort of quiet
and a
quit,
lot of
like starting in May, didn't he?
Oh no, he quiet quit starting in July when Pam Bondi fumbled the cover up that he was a part of, the cover up of the Epstein files, obviously, which is also why he quiet quit and wants to go back to Rumble. And so what's going on Rumble now is that all of the like right wing show hosts who are afraid of Candace Owens are like getting themselves all pumped up because Dan Bongino's coming back. Daddy's coming home. And so they think that Dan Bongino is going to take out Candace Owens now that he's not in the FBI. He's going to get decimated. No one has been more compromised than Dan Bongino has been by the Epstein cover-up, who is in right-wing media, not Kash Patel. I mean, it's going to be a bloodbath. So I'm excited for that. If you're excited for that, definitely go subscribe to The Discourse. I think that we're up to almost 5,000 on the Twitch channel. And when we get to 5,000, we're going to do a little bit of a gaming stream. Probably we'll finish Alan Woke too. Or maybe we'll try that Claire Obscure game that people keep yelling at me to buy.
I bought that, yeah, because everyone's saying it's the best game of the year. And I'm like, I don't normally play these type of games, but I did just buy a new gaming PC, so I guess I need to buy all.
Oh, look at you. Look at you.
Flexing on them.
We'll do this Bongino stuff in the fun half.
Yes, let's head into the fun half, take a quick break, and we will see you on the other side of things.
Okay, Emma, please.
Well, I feel that my voice is sorely lacking on the majority report.
Wait, look, Sam is unpopular.
I do deserve a vacation at Disney World. So, ladies and gentlemen, it is my pleasure to welcome Emma to the show.
It is Thursday.
I think you need to take over for Sam.
Yes, please.
No. I'm gonna pause you right there.
Wait, what?
You can't encourage Emma to live like this. And I'll tell you why. So was offered to tour, sushi, and poker with the boys. Tour, sushi, and poker with the boys. So was offered to tour, sushi, and poker with the boys.
What?
Tour, sushi, and poker.
Tim's upset.
Tour, sushi, and poker with the boys. So was offered to tour, sushi, and
that's what we call the biz.
Tour, sushi, and poker with the boys.
Right.
Tour, sushi, and poker.
We're gonna get demonetized.
I just think that what you did to Tim Pool was mean.
Free speech.
That's not what we're about here. Look at how sad he's become now. You shouldn't even talk about it. I think you're responsible.
I probably am in a certain way, but let's get to the meltdown here.
Tour, sushi, and poker with the boys.
Oh my God.
Tour,
wow.
Sushi.
I'm sorry, I'm losing my fucking mind.
So was offered a tour, sushi, and poker with the boys.
Logic.
Tour, sushi, and poker with the boys. Boy. Tour.
I think I'm like a little kid. I think I'm like a little kid. I think I'm like a kid.
Tour.
I think I'm like a little kid. I think I'm like a little kid.
Had this debate 7,000 times.
A little kid. I think I'm like a little kid. I think I'm like a kid.
Tour.
I'm losing my fucking mind.
Some people just don't understand.
So I'm not trying to be a dick right now, but like, I absolutely think the U.S. should be providing me with a wife and kids.
That's not what we're talking about here. Okay, all right.
is not a fun job. Tour?
That's a real thing. That's a real thing. Real thing. Willy Wonka tour? That's a real thing. That's a real thing. Real thing.
What's that offered a tour?
That's a real thing. That's a real thing. Real thing.
That's a tour?
A real thing. That's a real thing. Real thing.
What's that offered a tour?
Ladies and gentlemen, Joe Rogan has done it again.
That offered a tour?
That's a real thing. That's a
poker with the boys.
I think he might be blowing it out of proportion. Real thing. That's a
poker with the boys. That offered a tour?
That's a real thing. That's a
poker.
Let's go, Joey.
Tour? Sushi and poker with the boys.
Take it easy, Dan.
Tour? Sushi and poker.
Things have really gotten out of hand.
Sushi and poker with the boys.
Delusional.
Tour?
Deluded.
Sushi.
You don't have a clue as to what's going on. Live YouTube.
Sam has like the weight of the world on his shoulders.
Poggers.
Sam doesn't want to do this show anymore. It was so much easier when the Majority Report was just you. You were happy.
Let's change the subject.
Rangers and Knicks are doing great.
Now shut up. You don't want people saying reckless things on your program.
That's one of the most difficult parts about this show.
This is a pro-killing podcast.
I'm thinking maybe it's time we bury the hatchet.
Left is best. Trump Violet.
Tour?
Don't be foolish and don't fucking tweet at me and don't bitch. The way Emma has cucked all of these people, love it.
That's where my heart is, so I wrote my honors thesis about it.
Oh, she wrote an honest thesis. I guess I should hand the main mic to you now.
You are to the right of me on foreign policy.
We already fund Israel, dude. Are you against that?
That's a tougher question I don't have an answer to.
Incredible theme song.
Hi, Bumbler.
Emma Vigeland, absolutely one of my favorite people. Actually, not just in the game, like period.
We are back. It is the so-called fun half of the Majority Report. Just going to be us today. Brandon and Matt Binder's out today, so
yes,
we'll get into all of this stuff. Let's just read some IMs for a second, because we've got a lot. Lots of people have many thoughts about the horrible crime that we all witnessed in Minneapolis. Militant Apathy says, I guarantee the shooter either has a record of this or was never gotten past the application process and couldn't get hired as a policeman.
I hope his identity is publicized very soon.
Yeah. It's crazy that it hasn't. They haven't identified him yet. But I'm also
and
seeing...
every single agent in the vicinity who was both giving contradictory directions and also stood in the way of paramedics.
Bovino was there, was he not? Or no. I'm sorry.
I think he showed up on. I think he showed up
on site.
Not
later.
After, yeah.
STC, did you guys see the video after the fact of them smiling and patting each other on the back, literally celebrating their actions? Disgusting. TMR Peace Prize winner says, according to CNN, DHS policy forbids agents from standing in front of vehicles. They're supposed to form a tactical L around the vehicle, but not stand in front. It also prohibits them from firing into the vehicle like that.
Yeah, I mean, none of this is legal. It's all just it was a murder.
Yep.
By a fascist thug from the government.
Absolutely. And this kind of behavior when it comes to cars is like classic police operating procedure too. If it weren't for all of the video, they would be saying what they're still trying to say, which is that she ran the car right at them. That, she drove right at us. She was using the car as a weapon, and that's why we had to shoot through the windshield. It happens all the time. And it's only because we have more access to videos like these do those narratives get immediately debunked.
Right. June Oliver, Matt listening to Tim Pool at 2.5 speed yesterday sounded like you put him through a filter to make him sound bad.
Wow. The conspiracy confirmed.
Science is political. Chuck hugged him? Yeah, buddy. Look at the photo. Chuck hugged Marco Rubio yesterday in a press pool.
We shouldn't have any illusions about what's going on. Like, there's not an opposition to fascism in this country. Chuck Schumer is a fascist. Like, Chuck Schumer supports Israel, and like that's one of those things he said about Palestinians before. Like, it's a biblical fanaticism.
Yeah. Social Democrat Detroit, what is with fascist Barbie and her selection of hats? I mean, sometimes when you got
That's all Noam does is accessorize.
She accessorizes. She also is, I would imagine, a little bit worried about like the amount of hair extensions not being in place. A hat kind of keeps that a little bit more contained. Banana Hammer. I'm in Heidelberg, home to major U.S. base since World War II reconstruction, studying abroad right now, so I'm pretty concerned about if I should get out of Dodge or not. You have to assume if EU is playing war games, U.S. bases are bracing themselves for action. No, waiting to hear anything from my home uni. Thanks. I don't think you need to be concerned about U.S. and military action in Europe right now.
Just weapon sales.
Yeah, I mean it's a mutually. I mean Trump is being, you know, obviously obsequious right now a little bit to Putin and to the Russian government, because our theory about this is just basically like that. Trump is seemingly convinced that he's gonna let Putin do what he wants in his own backyard, and that the Western Hemisphere is our backyard, and that's what we get to conquer. But the reality is that in terms of funding Ukraine, the infrastructure of like the national security state and Congress is going to continue to do that, because Trump doesn't have the discipline or stamina to even know what is going on that front. And in the end, they all just care if line go up. But I'm not sure if that's what your question was about. But Left Coastline says there needs to be a public funeral for this woman, and it needs to be live streamed by a network, and every advocate for gun violence and immigration defense and every left politician needs to be on that stage speaking about how we got here for 24 hours. I'm not exactly suggesting to Kirkify her death, but this is the kind of moment for the left to rally around and spark a resistance. I mean, they're going to try to pretend like, you know, this didn't happen, cover it up. We already know that the feds are trying to Bigfoot the Minnesota investigation, and it will be incumbent upon us to keep this in the public eye. But it's also incumbent upon the political leadership of the so-called opposition party as well. Like I mean, what is, I said this back at the time, what is our version of the Lake and Riley Act? Where it's gross what they do, but they took that case and they tried to create some sort, like an emotional fascistic response to it. Renee Good should be the antidote to that. We should use what happened to her as a way to say that we should abolish ICE. That should be the rallying cry.
I mean, I definitely agree with that. And I think that's also the issue that the Democrats want to stave off, and a lot of liberals want to stave off, because the reality is that ICE wasn't created overnight, whole cloth, out of nowhere. It's an exacerbation of an already fascistic military industrial complex and police industrial complex that has been imported back home through the vector of, you know, this specter of undocumented immigration to get people to sign their rights over. And so I think one of the dangers that we have to be worried about, besides Democrats just doing nothing other than vague condemnations, is that they'll try to exceptionalize, you know, ICE under Trump. They'll say ICE is only bad because Trump has control over it now. And once Trump is out of control over it, it'll go back to being good. And ICE was never good. The immigration enforcement policy in the United States over the past 40 years has been terrible, even without ICE. But, you know, it's been especially bad under ICE. And if they can't convince people of that, they'll try to exceptionalize ICE within the law enforcement framework of the United States to make it seem as though, well, okay, well, maybe ICE is the worst thing, but if we just replace it with something different, like nice, right? The nice
reformed DHS.
Yeah, when in reality, this is exactly what law enforcement in the United States has always been like. It's just been like this primarily for, you know, populations that are out of the spotlight more often, right? ICE has brought this kind of law enforcement to the streets of America in a way that it used to be relegated to the inner cities or to parts of, you know, gay communities or, you know, parts of the global South. And that's what, you know, the expansion of fascism looks like. But it didn't start overnight. And so I think that when we talk about, you know, ICE in this shooting, it has to be situated in the entire complex of what has led to this moment. And that is just the history of policing in America. And this is what it has always looked like. It's just being exposed to more and more people. Just like during the George Floyd protest, when we saw cops for the first time cracking old people's heads open on the sidewalk, people were initially left aghast, but they're so used to seeing stuff like that now, unless it's like, you know, Matt and you are saying, it's we keep hammering on it, people will just forget. People will just ultimately go back into a period of docility after like Democrats take control. Not even in 2028, but in the midterms, they'll go, "Oh, it must just be better now because there's more
that's
oversight."
What happened before. I mean, this and you make such a great point too that like I should have connected when I was speaking about ICE being an outgrowth of the war on terror. I mean, it created by the DHS, ICE created by the war on terror, but it's also building on decades of broken windows policing. Like using the tactics that were usually reserved again for like the inner cities, for Black and brown communities, these loose associations, things like gang databases, where if you're in a group with somebody, you're going to be classified and basically pre-cleared as a criminal for inner city policing. They're using those tactics and federalizing it in a way, but like there's your local police department will have your local cops' photos on the website. ICE is doing this, but with the war on terror infrastructure, which has zero transparency. And police departments don't have good transparency either, but it's on hyperdrive here. So it's the merging of those two things. And broken windows policing and police militarism was increased and was benefited by the war on terror. I mean, we gave it was such a slush fund what we gave to these defense contractors that we had all this excess equipment that got sent to your local cops. So these are things that are all connected, to your point, Brandon.
No, absolutely, and they've all been. I was gonna say, and they've all been used to accomplish the same goal, which is to get people to give up their civil rights, to give up their human rights by creating special categories of people who just don't deserve those things. Terrorists, narco-terrorists, drug dealers, criminals, communists, leftists. Like even broken windows policing is an evolution of a type of post-Jim Crow, post de jure segregational policy of law enforcement that gave rise after it became illegal to just openly discriminate and legally discriminate against people. And so a lot of this is just rooted in, like, since we've gotten human rights and civil rights in the United States of America, since they've been afforded to the working class broadly in the early 1900s, we'll say, they've been being eroded. And anytime marginalized groups get civil rights in this country, the first thing the powers that be start doing is trying to erode them. Roe v. Wade, the next day it was being eroded by special interest groups. It's a constant assault on the rights of the working class in one form or another. Sorry, Matt.
Nate B. Panic on Twitter had this. I was worth a reminder that Obama inherited ICE as a fledgling agency, increased its budget 300%, established a nationwide network of detention centers, and expanded the secure communities enforcement program from 14 counties under Bush to all 3,181 jurisdictions in America. And it'd be nice if we had a press that could get maybe to Obama for comment on this. Maybe in place of saying, "Hey, Barack, do you recommend the book Abundance?" That why should we? Yeah, let's ask the guy who saw the American dream die under his watch. In regards to normal people being able to afford houses, has never fucking returned since his administration and the Citibank administration that he ran. Could he be asked about some of this stuff? Like, hey, should we thank you for the expansion of ICE and these sort of executive powers that
or not reversing Bush's expansion of like executive powers, which literally allowed for Trump to build on.
Or designating Maduro enemy of the state. Like, do you want to comment on this shit, or should we just ask you about what's on your fucking playlist?
Yeah.
And since you mentioned Maduro, that's such a danger with Trump and Republicans in general when they exist in this duopoly with Democrats. Sometimes Republicans are just the ones who have to break the ice, no pun intended, and then it's normalized. It exists, and Democrats won't ratchet it back. That's one thing you have to be concerned about, even with like the invasion that's going on, or I guess right now we're in the gunboat diplomacy phase of invading Venezuela, where if Trump invades Venezuela and starts occupying Venezuela, after he's out of office, whether they impeach him, which they won't do, like they'll just continue the occupation. And a lot of people will give the Democrats points just for moving away from a clumsy, unsophisticated, chaotic occupation that Trump is overseeing to a more responsible stewardship of the American empire, which is what a lot of Democrats have rather take their main umbrage with Trump with, that he's not a responsible steward of the American empire, that he makes it look bad. He doesn't do things as efficient as he possibly could. He's not reliable when it comes to quid pro quo the same way that other politicians are in a lot of cases. And so, that's my real fear, since you mentioned Maduro, that Trump is just going to invade Venezuela, start occupying it, and then our system will exceptionalize Trump in that way, despite the fact the invasion of Venezuela has been on the table for decades. Yeah. And then they'll have gotten it passed, and it'll be reality, and they'll just keep doing it. And nothing will be or
what Republicans build and what they break is never built back or reversed by Democrats. Like Zoran Mamdani right now is showing exactly how possible that is by his transition team expertly coming up with a legal framework to reverse Eric Adams' executive orders post-indictment. Now, the Republicans come up with insane legal frameworks, like what they're talking about, arguing about what birthright citizenship really says in the Constitution, not tethered to reality, but they are using arguments and power to successfully achieve their ends. And like that, it's not, there's a class of liberal, professional class liberal, that sees leadership as the stewardship of the system that already has benefited them, right? That sees that as gauche. And that's both like on the Republican side with Trump and the way he's done it, but even when a democratic socialist like Zoran does that, like, oh, you're not arguing for maintenance, you're arguing for an overhaul, and you're making your case. Like, how could you? And what Zoran's doing is showing what's possible in that way, that like you can reverse what your predecessor did. You can make systemic change, and you can do it within the first few weeks of getting into power. And then, for example, we had Biden, who did Tom Homan hang on through Biden's administration, or he started under Obama? He left and then came back.
He hung out with that cash.
But I mean, how about Brett McGurk is another example. Like, he had multiple Republican holdovers from the Trump administration that he just kept on. Why do we do that? I mean, Trump just made RFK Jr. HHS secretary.
I mean, the ICE was doing 1488 style Nazi signaling in Trump's first fucking administration.
Oh my God. Yes. Remember that it was before I started here, but it still rings out in my mind. There was a Border Patrol a Facebook group that was basically just dedicated to images and cartoons prior to AI of AOC getting sexually assaulted by them.
Yeah. And what happened? What did any purge happen? No, nothing. Nothing fucking happened.
This condemnation. It was some sort of like general vague condemnation, which almost looks like accountability when one party just doesn't even do that. They just pretend like it's all good.
Exactly. Did Biden have a trifecta? Biden had a very, very, very narrow trifecta. It was 50-50.
How many times are we going to have Democrats have even a narrow trifecta?
Yeah.
And not do shit?
Well, I mean, even if he only had a narrow trifecta, his main claim to fame, his main like core value proposition was that he was the guy who could get Republicans on board with things. Yeah. Like, he was the person you should vote for because, unlike a Bernie Sanders or some other candidate, he was the one who knew how to make those connections that you need to make to get, your agenda passed. And when the infrastructure bill, I keep wanting to say big, beautiful bill, but Build Back Better was like, broken apart. Like, it just never came to fruition.
Exactly. Okay. What should we get to here?
You want to do Bongino versus the Black Pills?
Okay. Do we want to start sadder and then move to more funny, or intersperse them?
I don't think it matters.
Okay. All right.
Our emotions are all over the place.
Yeah. Fun. It's so fun. 2026. Jesus. What's going on? We were so optimistic. And anyway, so Dan Bongino makes his glorious return to podcasting.
Shinier than ever.
Straight out of the failure of the Epstein cover-up.
Oh.
Whoa, you are not joking. Crazy.
I know.
You can see the lights. You can see all the lighting in his head.
I have never thought to tell a man to tone down the moisturizer, but maybe it's not even moisturizer, just straight up
He looks
oil.
like he's like in the 10th round of a boxing match and he's had Vaseline administered.
You know what? Maybe it is just sweat. Maybe this guy is just terrified, because the problem for Dan Bongino is that he spent, I don't know, years as a podcaster hyping up the Epstein case. And all of the conspiracies around that. And then he became deputy FBI director. And you got to take some oaths of office when you go into the FBI. He is now sworn to real secrecy, like not, serious secrecy. Like, you can't say crap. It's like, I don't understand what the value is of bringing him back into podcasting as a compromised individual, but I guess the right is that gullible.
He's like a Rumble king. Like, Dan Bongino is the king of Rumble. It seems silly now that
Glenn
like
Greenwald's
Candace Owens
right now. Going on.
Now that their Rumble is a lot more well populated with right-wing figures who get a decent audience on there. But Dan Bongino was like the Rumble guy for the first few years of the platform, and I'm pretty sure he's also pretty like invested in it or part of the leadership in some way. And so a return to Rumble for Dan Bongino is more about like a return of somebody who has a little bit more control over the platform than say your average podcaster would.
Okay, gotcha.
Let's just play a little before and after with Bongino from his time as like Rumble King and his time as deputy director of the FBI.
Listen, that Jeffrey Epstein story is a big deal. Please do not let that story go. Keep your eye on this. Catherine Rumler, we need to keep the heat on this case, folks. There are a lot of people who are knee deep in the Washington swamp who are not telling you the truth about serious allegations out there that Epstein may have had video and audio of people out there doing things they shouldn't have been doing. And you should be asking yourself the question, how is it that all these people, the CIA director, the Obama fixer, Bill Clinton, all intersected paths with Jeffrey Epstein? Jeffrey Epstein isn't with us anymore, and nobody seems to want to talk about it. Outside of a few entrepreneurial media outlets saying, hey, this is a big deal.
He killed himself. You want me to get, I've seen the whole file. He killed himself.
Listen,
well, not only did he say that, when they questioned him about the like difference in his opinion between like basically those two clips, he said he'll say whatever he needs to for money. That was basically his admission. He was like, well, yeah, but I was being paid to say one of those things before, and now I'm being paid or empowered to not say that thing now.
Right.
So yeah.
Oh, thanks. I guess
it's very clarifying.
Yeah, I think I'll keep asking you for comment on things.
I don't even know how you pull this off, I guess, but they're really letting this go, the Epstein thing, aren't they?
They never really give a shit.
I know.
It's the media people. It's only a problem for their media assets who like have some like object permanence and realize what they said yesterday versus today.
And I think the Epstein thing had like immense value in starting the like cascade of Trump's unpopularity and moving him more into lame duck territory. Now, as we predicted, he was going to ramp up the authoritarian stuff. And I don't know if we could have seen how bad it was. It has started the year on 2026, both with like the Maduro kidnapping, the bombing of Venezuela, and now the sanctioning of the murder of Renee Good in Minneapolis. But this is all he's got now, and it's going to get worse throughout the year. So like the Epstein stuff was valuable in that way of like turning the public on him, making it seem like he's not a trust. I mean, the idea that you would be trusting of Trump at that point is insane. But like, the people thought of him as an anti-establishment figure that was not like the corporate drones that they hate in government. And now
he looks established.
Now he looks 100% like BFFs with Jeffrey Epstein. So there was value in that, and the fact that he couldn't lobby the rest of the Republicans, even though the reports were that he was calling them screaming, trying to get them to not sign on to the discharge petition, and then to basically the almost unanimous vote in the House, nearly, except for that one guy, and then a unanimous consent in the Senate to pass to release these files. They have only released 1% of it. They're just like violating the congressional the statute openly, by the way.
And non-compliance.
Yeah.
Not only that, but I think the state that the files that have come out, that state that they've come out in, and also the fact that they just keep stumbling across more evidence that they seemingly haven't processed. If you believe that's what's happening, it at least indicates one thing, right? Which is that they never at any point intended to release a single file, because for all of the work that the FBI was doing to catalog where Trump's name is in the files, they don't seem to have taken the actual like next step of redacting or putting that in some sort of like comprehensive, like, folder or whatever. And it's showing as they're actually being forced to release the files now, that despite all the way back in February, like Pam Bondi giving those influencers, libs of TikTok, I don't know if it was Jack Posobiec there, but giving those influencers, those binders, no time, even when those binders were made, was there any effort to actually get the files in order for release. And you could even go deeper and say, if they keep saying that they're finding all of these 5 million files here, 8 billion files here, was there any investigation done? Yeah. Like, was where was all this evidence when the investigation was done? The whole thing is not only suspicious, but being handled in the most suspicious way possible.
Well, maybe this is what Dan is blowing the whistle on here. Let's hear him out.
I don't think this is what he's returning to.
No.
I think he's returning to put Candace Owens in her place.
Oh, gotcha.
Endless complaining, then just don't watch the shows. It's okay. Like, this is a constitutional republic. You're not obligated to listen to my show. Justin, what was the line on the air with Jim? It's not a freaking airport, man. You don't have to announce your departure. Like, you get these black pillars. The thing about black pillars, where everything sucks all the time, is they're like, well, we're demanding accountability, but you're not great. So am I. That's not what you're endlessly complaining about things you don't know anything about. Like, that's all you do. Like, he'll shut down the border.
I thought I knew about it because you taught me about it in 2023.
He's tilted. He's tilted. He's buffed too. He's like buffed and varnished, but he's tilted as hell. Because this is his audience. These are the red pillars. His audience, the black pill reds or whatever.
Yeah, well, he goes like, you're demanding accountability. Like, I am too, but I was until I became a part of the group of people you need to demand accountability from. I'm so panicked.
Yeah, it's like I'm not a black pillar, but I will say, saying you should release the files about the sex trafficking investigation FBI is sitting on. That's not just everything sucks all the time. There's an active cover-up.
They are so uncomfortable getting internal criticism from their base. And that is, it is the fact that the Epstein stuff is going to depress the base in some fashion. We don't necessarily know how that will turn out.
It's like a culture jammer, basically.
Exactly. But that's what, but Bongino, now that he's been in government, he sounds like Tim Pool, like caring about the midterms. Yeah. And what Candace Owens is doing, which has been so glorious, is depressing turnout potentially for the midterms for that reason. And it just is like, I wonder how the audience has become so jacked up on conspiracism response to that kind of thing. I don't know.
Justin, what was the line on the air with Jim? It's not a freaking airport, man. You don't have to announce your departure. Like, you get these black pillars. The thing about black pillars, where everything sucks all the time, is they're like, well, we're demanding accountability, but you're not great. So am I. That's not what you're endlessly complaining about things you don't know anything about. Like, that's all you do. Like, he'll shut down the border, 10 people across the month. Why wasn't it 0? Okay, well, can you just acknowledge going from 1 million to 10?
The max right.
That way, and there's a cost to that. And the cost you see is in, polling numbers around the midterms. You can't let this negative vibe constantly set in. That doesn't mean healthy debates about policy are not welcome. I'm not a big tariff guy.
Policy like releasing the files on the sex trafficker that you're obligated to release.
Yeah.
Oh yeah, policy. I got policy differences.
Hey, I'm not a big tariff guy. I've said that 1,000 times.
Oh,
Debating policies are fine.
Kill him.
Debating policies are fine. I think a lot of the so-called damage from the terrorists was dramatically over-exaggerated. Even people who don't acknowledge that now. The economy's motoring, 4% growth. But the black pill, complaining and whining all the time about the administration, it's just like, man, what team are you on? Holy Moses, man. So you don't have to watch. It's okay. There's a door. Go find the freaking exits, because I don't really give a shit. I'm not here for anybody's money.
Oh, yeah, sure.
He definitely is. He's honestly, he's still being a coward here. Just like he didn't, release the Epstein files. He's not even naming names. Who are you complaining about? Like, obviously, he's complaining about a portion of his audience that he's gotten addicted to the things that he's complaining about, addicted to believing conspiracies and disbelieving any evidence to the contrary. Not that I believe what he's saying here. But he doesn't have the courage to just point out that, like, yeah, no, this is Candace Owens. You're mad that Candace Owens is doing this. Tucker Carlson's doing this. And no offense, that considering how compromised he is, they're going to atomize him when he comes back with this garbage.
Yeah, that's
and
why
he's going to look doubly cowardly.
It's important for anybody who has like a Rumble account to go in and comment on all of his shows and say how disappointed you are as a patriotic conservative that he has performed a cover-up of sex crimes. Here he is on Fox and Friends from last summer. This is about the time, Brandon, you said he started quiet quitting, and this is one of the funniest things I've ever seen somebody I hate say on TV.
We share it. Our offices are linked. He turns on the faucet. I hear it. He's there he gets in at like 6 o'clock in the morning. He doesn't leave till 7 at night. I'm in there at 7:30 in the morning. He uses the gym. I work out in my apartment. But I
think he's talking about Kash Patel.
Okay.
My apartment. But I stare at these four walls all day in D.C., by myself, divorced from my wife. Not divorced, but I mean separated, divorced. And it's hard. I mean, we love each other, and it's hard to be apart.
But you're doing some great work. You're straightening out the FBI.
Wow. I mean, honestly, like, I don't believe anything that he just said about their daily life at the FBI as deputy director and director of the FBI. But even as not a fan of law enforcement, the fact that the deputy director and the director of the FBI's jobs are hard and long and involve hard, long days do not surprise me. That doesn't surprise me at all. It's probably a real hard pivot to go from like recording a Rumble show in your basement where you don't any pivot from a job where you don't have to wear real shoes or real pants to a job where you do have to wear real shoes and real pants is like a really nasty pivot. And that's all he's complaining about. Like, turns out this job I begged for is hard. And then the only thing he did while at that job was cover up Jeffrey Epstein. They'll say that he caught the January 6th bomber, but really all he accomplished was being part of the Jeffrey Epstein cover up, and he left.
Yeah, and the thing is like, it's almost too generous to say that they're invested in the Republican project and in the midterms too, because what he's really invested in is the this Trump era, and you have Candace and Tucker and even Marjorie Taylor Greene abandoning ship a little bit, criticizing the administration. They'll never go after the big guy because let's remember it's a cult of personality, and maybe they will in the future, but as of right now they haven't done so. And they are setting themselves up for like what's next, because the question for a lot of these elected Republicans is like, now that you've castrated yourself for Donald Trump and allowed him to determine the budget, even though that's supposed to be Congress's authority through rescissions, now that you've basically ceded all wartime authority over to this like absolute lunatic, what is next? What is next? Like, if you guys get wiped out and we're going to see some of these retirements, what is your political brand? Is it going to get so bad that you are now toxic and there needs to be like a new brand of Republican in that ecosystem? And I think that like there are others that are looking to the future, and there are people that put their lot in with this administration that are quickly regretting it. And Bongino looks like that guy.
Absolutely. I mean, Marjorie Taylor Greene and Candace Owens, they're the future of the Republican Party in ideology and tone, if not like literally, because one is Black and both are women. And so like likely the Republican Party just will never get to that point where they're able to accept both those things in leadership. But the kinds of things that they're selling is exactly what the Republican Party needs to hear, because they're like only one or two steps away from what Trump was selling, and they're still compatible with corporations, with neoliberalism, with neoconservatism. And so, ultimately, I think a lot of people are looking past Trump because they know the midterms are already gone. The Republican Party has already Trump has always been a double-edged sword for the Republican Party. Like, he's uniquely popular and therefore able to uniquely whip up a frenzy for whatever you want to get done. But he's like a real like toxic cloud over your brand. And so once he's gone in 2028, who knows what it will look like for them. The reality, though, is that because we live in a two-party system, it just means that like if the Democratic candidate isn't good for those 4 years, people will just be forced to vote for the Republican, more or less, because there will only be like one option. Because the idea that the Republicans can ever be so bad that they never win again, given the reality of like the election interference that they engage in, and then also just like the culture of back and forth that we have of legitimization by opposition, like there'll never be a Republican so bad that like a Democrat can't be bad enough to make you nostalgic for it, especially as things just continue to overall get worse. Because that was the mentality about from Democrats about George W. Bush. He was supposed to be such a bad president that they would never have another Republican president, because people were in the streets, they were calling him Hitler, they had all of these things about them. And then 16 years later, they love Bush. They see Bush hug Michelle Obama, and it's like they start tearing up. They should do a TV show together. So I mean, I think we're just stuck in a really bad cycle when it comes to stuff like that.
Yeah, absolutely. All right, let's open up the phone line, 646-257-3920. Read some IMs. Progressive Blob 2028. Castrating yourself for Trump is called being doka-pilled. Molly says, Bongino has so much oil on his face that the U.S. government is about to invade it. Emma...
Sitko's interested all of a sudden. Chevron.
I think that Sheen is just because he's probably back on like PEDs now that he's not being drug tested as part of the like being part of the FBI. So like he's probably back on a few enhancements.
Not Binder. Brandon, you think that Kash Patel's FBI is not like is being diligent about screening people at the top for things like PEDs and testosterone and perhaps any other uppers? I don't know.
Well, I do think that they made Dan Bongino get off of them because he was like a wild card when it came to those press conferences about the Epstein file cover-up. So they made him get off of them specifically because he might have gone rogue. That's also why he stopped giving those press conferences after that one, that Matches show. There was like a big gap where you just didn't see Dan Bongino for like months. It was like, where is Dan Bongino? It was really noticeable.
Yes. Nadia says, your show is keeping me sane. It was my 40th birthday yesterday. Can I get a shofar? I need to reset my soundboard. I had a weird, like I ended up thinking it was stolen. This is my iPad from home. Whatever. I like reset it because I was like, oh, where is it?
Is that Brian stole your iPad?
No, I was like looking for it in my apartment when we were moving, and I couldn't, or after we moved, and I couldn't figure out where it was.
Way to remove guilt from you immediately, Matt.
And I was like, yeah, right. And I never really used the iPad, to be real.
There's a new person in the office.
So I locked it, and now I need to like go through the process of unlocking it. So can we do another sound drop for the shofar? I'm sorry, Nadia, but happy birthday.
Go Bills.
And we still don't have any more extra money.
Corporations Ate My Baby said, hey, I'm Mark Crew. I feel traumatized by the murder of Renee Good, the lies about her, and even the power of think tanks. But knowing 500 billion more from our GDP is going to military contractors and the misery will cause all of us is making me want to dig a hole into the under the flower beds for a bit of a nap.
It's grim stuff. This country killed hundreds and hundreds of thousands, up to millions of Iraqis when I was a child.
Yeah.
Like, bad stuff. The people that are in power are bad.
Californian Resistance says, Emma saw The Voice of Hind Rajab at the Palm Springs Film Festival yesterday. Everyone, please go see this film. Heartbreaking, but it must be seen. The audience sat in stunned silence for a while after it ended. Oh, yes, I've heard.
Is that the one Miss Rachel was promoting?
Might have been. Let's take a quick call here. Calling from a 517 area code. Who's this? Where are you calling from?
Hi, this is Anonymous from Grand Rapids.
Anonymous from Grand Rapids. What's on your mind?
I wanted to talk real quick about a couple things. I was present at the protest that led to the arrest of Jessica Plichta.
Mm-hmm. Yes.
And
The activist, for people that don't know, who we played yesterday, was arrested on when giving an interview to local news.
Yes. So I got to run soon, so I might call in some other time with more details. But ultimately, I think you guys should try to have her on the show. I know she did a interview with Zateo, so I would try to see if you can get her contact information. And there is a deeper story here with Grand Rapids Police having a history of targeting activists. I am not sure if you're kind of familiar with. Sorry, I'm nervous.
No, it's okay.
I moved to Grand Rapids recently, and Grand Rapids Police has a history of racially profiling, and they murdered an unarmed black man in 2022, and the community rallied around to push for community support or community control of policing. And since then, several activists who are part of that push continue to be arrested at protests.
Gotcha.
I really don't think that there's a coincidence there. So
that does make a lot of sense.
Yep. So I don't know if she would speak to that, but that is definitely occurring. Additionally, I wanted to say today I reached out to our Attorney General, Dana Nessel, and they told us they told me that they were surprised they haven't. I called about the murder. I'm blanking on everybody's name right now.
Of Renee Good.
Yes. And I called about what you guys have talked about in terms of pushing for the, like Illinois' example, to set up like an anonymous tip line for ICE violations.
Right.
And I found out I was the first person who called about that in Michigan.
Or they said that to you.
They said that to me. But they quite frankly were like, we are surprised, and almost indicated that like they were wanting to hear that feedback. So people need to email their office at miag@michigan.gov.
Yep, and people should be doing that and doing the same, or calling their local attorneys general if they are not in Michigan, obviously.
Yes. Well, thanks so much, guys. First time, long time. Love you guys. Tough times we're in. Have a great rest of your day.
Yeah, appreciate you. Thank you. That's great information. And thanks. And solves some questions that we had. And I mean, look, she was wearing a keffiyeh, I believe, when she was arrested. So that was kind of my immediate assumption. But that also makes total sense.
Yeah. I mean, they have budgets to spy on you.
Yep.
And the only way to do this is to swell these organizations to such a large size that they can't spy on everybody.
Yep. Okay. One more call, then we'll do some more clips. Calling from an 847 area code. Who's this? Where are you calling from?
Daniel.
Daniel
from Chicago.
Daniel from Chicago. What's on your mind?
If you had to pick between the Shapiro faction or the Tucker Candace faction taking over the GOP, which would you pick?
If I had to pick, oh gosh,
it's not really much to recommend one over the other, honestly.
Right. I mean, I don't know. The Ben Shapiro faction is the continuation of the genocide in Gaza, but the Candace and Tucker faction, I don't think is earnestly interested in stopping that, except to exploit it for anti-Semitic gains
we'll
and for
see
views.
what New Tucker has to say about this this killing of this woman.
Yeah.
He was really down to do a lot of content about how George Floyd wasn't actually murdered by the cop that we all saw murder him. So yeah, I hope they do.
If you had to pick,
Okay, but let me just I appreciate the question. I see what you're saying.
What would you say? What would you say?
Well,
how about that?
Okay, well, let me just you can say who you would pick in a second, but I don't think it's the right, like, the Candace Owens and the Ben Shapiro faction you're talking about, they were the same thing like 2 years ago before she got kicked out of Turning Point USA. The point is just like that we should not overstate the differences between these factions. It's being overstated because the feud right now is a media feud that also involves like the money and infrastructure of TPUSA and the future of the Republican project as it relates to the midterms and electoralism. So I actually I think that the ideological differences are like immensely overstated because I don't believe in the sincerity of them.
Am I still there?
Yeah.
Who would you pick was Matt's question.
To me? Oh, I would say there's differences. I saw Candace said the Jews did the slave trade. I mean, she's recommending all these like Nazi books. I mean, it seems pretty.
She's doing Holocaust denialism, and Ben Shapiro is currently doing
denying the
Holocaust denialism in Gaza.
Here's an easier question to answer than which one I would support is, do I want to see Zionism expelled from all political ideologies on the right and left? Yes. I want to see them lose.
Well, I mean, I would just add that I feel like Ben Shapiro's ideology is already broadly reflective of what Republicans believe. Ben Shapiro and the Daily Wire are just the sort of more independent seeming arm of like Fox News and that sort of Republican media apparatus. Candace Owens, like even her Nazism wouldn't be a problem to Ben Shapiro. And this is the thing about
it wasn't.
Nick Fuentes
That's
too.
my point.
It's like,
it wasn't.
It's like Nick Fuentes loving Hitler is not the problem that Republicans have with him. It's that he hates Israel, or he pretends to hate Israel for the clicks, because that's a point in which he can distinguish himself from other Republicans because, like we saw with the Young Republican group chat that leaked, they also love Hitler. And so like the differences between like the Candace Owens and the Ben Shapiro factions of the party are superficial, and they are largely related to how they position Israel as part of their anti-Semitic project. Are they the kinds of Christian evangelicals that want to, use Israel as a place to kick off the rapture, or are they the kind who want to distance themselves because they hate Jewish people altogether? But even if you believe that they have that distinction, I don't think that's a meaningful way to interpret their rhetoric, because I don't think if they got into power that Candace Owens would stop funding Israel, or that even Ben Shapiro or a Ben Shapiro style ideology would continue funding Israel once they became too toxic, or if they became useful to the American supremacist project, because both of those groups support American Western supremacy, of which Israel's just part of at the moment, a useful part of. But if we would jettison them if they stopped being useful for that.
So Matt, you prefer Tucker take over?
I want to see Zionism lose any subscribers in this country. Yes. So if you want to reduce that to Tucker wins the Republicans, I guess reduce it that way.
Okay. All right. Thanks for the answer.
Okay.
I think it's actually an important thing, and I defer to people like Ilan Pape and Avi Shlaim, that it's one thing for the people on the liberal side of the ledger here to lose support for Israel, and it's very good and welcome. But the key pillar right now is on the right, and I want that pillar to collapse.
What should we get to here?
Want to do Levitt's thing or Maxwell Frost?
Okay, hold on one sec. Let me take a look. Do we want to do more Minneapolis? Do we want to move to Venezuela? Yeah. Let's turn to the Venezuela thing. Oh, this actually is funny. 16 is funny. Mark Wayne Mullen. So today there is a vote on it's a War Powers Resolution vote on attempting to limit Trump's actions in Venezuela after he bombed the country without congressional authorization. The Congress has the power to declare war. There are currently 2 open authorizations for the use of military force that are related to 9/11. After 9/11, the Congress gave the Bush administration and the presidency broad powers to wage war against terrorists, and it's very broad in its language. But the one thing that's specific about it is that it is, related to terrorism in reaction to 9/11 and then in reaction to Iraq. So it's quite clearly statutorily about the Middle East. But the reason they talk about narco-terrorism is they are trying to fit that into what Trump is authorized to do legally by Congress. I think it's absolutely absurd on its face, but it just goes to show how lawless this administration is and how they have effectively stacked the judiciary to rubber stamp whatever they want and have quite effectively neutered the body of Congress, with Republicans happily participating in their own castration in that body. And so one of the Republicans that here is seemingly tasked with manufacturing consent for the kidnapping of Maduro and this act is Mark Wayne Mullen. And they're getting into a bit of a problem here because, John Bolton was going on CNN and being like, why don't you just impose Machado there? Because you're keeping the rest of the regime in place. And like, when you're thinking from a neocon perspective,
yeah,
it's true. Because this was so poorly conceived by their own like bloodthirsty standards. And this contradiction gets Senator Mark Wayne Mullen into a little bit of trouble.
Do you describe this as regime change?
No. What we did is we took out an illegitimate president. He was never duly elected. So there can't be regime change if he should have never been put in place to begin with.
Was his vice president duly elected?
I don't know how their elections happened. I don't know if they're on the same ticket or separate. I don't know how that works, but I know if we were interested in having a full regime change, if we were interested in taking over Venezuela, we would have left our force in place.
You can't do that.
Yeah. So they're leaving the vice president in charge. Apparently, she's signaling at least to Trump that she'll play ball with him, which she has to do because they literally have a gun to her head.
I mean, Maduro was also doing that.
Yes, but right, Maduro was doing that and was in the process of talking to U.S. oil companies, but it didn't matter because this was about, it was a fascist spectacle too, and it was a way to send a message to Cuba. It was a way to send a message to Colombia, although apparently Petro had a call with Trump, and they went, Trump tweeted out that it went well and his attitude had changed, which is all that matters. It seems like a theme of this administration is also Trump wanting to do something absolutely insane, going really far with the tariffs too, and then everybody having to clean up the mess after that because they are trying to expand his power as an authoritarian leader, and you have to do that by if you test the limits and you keep stretching, it will eventually the fabric will loosen.
Well, yeah, and I mean, I think that you're right too. That a big part of this is the spectacle that it creates, right, at the global scale, because this is saber rattling to disguise the fact that American hegemony is in its waning age. People keep talking about the Monroe Doctrine, the Don Roe Doctrine, as though this is some sort of expansion of that or some sort of expansion of our footprint, but it's not that. This is a retreat. This is a retreat from the position that America controls the entire globe. That America, through soft power and behind the scenes jockeying and sometimes a more eloquent form of regime change or coup, and then sometimes stuff like this, is able to maintain its hegemonic power over the rest of the world. We can no longer do that anymore, and so we have to return to what is essentially the piracy and imperialism of the 18th and 19th century. This sort of gunboat diplomacy, kidnapping the Hawaiian princess or whatever, and ransoming her back in the form of becoming a state. This is a return to that, and that has a separate value, right? It demonstrates to China that I guess we're willing to cut off our nose to spite our face. But I just I think that occupation of Venezuela would be very unpopular. If for no other reason than it would be transparently for oil. And while Americans aren't above being tricked into imperialism or tricked into invasion or supporting genocide through other metrics. Because of the Iraq war, the idea of like no blood for oil is so strong in the kind of anti-war sentiment in America that it would be too easy to harken back to that. It would be too unpopular. And they've been very transparent about it being for oil, despite the fact that a lot of Western media won't be honest about how transparent they've been. They keep insinuating that they haven't said it, but Trump was very honest in his announcement. This is for oil. We want their oil. We want their beautiful black crude. He keeps saying it. He's salivating. Marco Rubio's salivating. But, you know,
big black crude.
The reality is like to get that crude, we'd have to occupy the country with our military. We'd have to engage in like a whole scale occupation a la Afghanistan and Iraq. And that would be very unpopular, but we don't have a popular opposition leader anymore in the country to put in charge. And so we're kind of just demanding that like they do it themselves. So we're like, okay, you know, you coup yourself. We kidnapped your president, you coup yourselves.
Yeah, I mean, and they realized like that Machado, who can't even, I mean, she's not been in the country for a while. She had to be smuggled out to get her Nobel Peace Prize because she's so reviled, like has no credibility because she's just saying everything the Trump administration is saying, begging. What?
I was going to say, I think that really that's not the reason they don't install her. I think the reason they don't install her is because Trump is jealous about that Nobel Peace Prize thing.
That's also true.
I think that he's really just like, oh, you know, if you wanted to be president of Venezuela, you shouldn't have won that prize. And that's why she gave it to him. Like, did you see that? She was like, I'll give it to you. I'll give it to you because she's trying to get back into position. Like, like she shouldn't have won that prize. That was a mistake that she made. She should have turned it down immediately. Gave it to Trump.
Yeah, well, I'm just glad that, you know, like a doctor in Gaza didn't get it. And it went to this, like, you know, far right puppet for capitalist interests in Venezuela. But like the oil thing about that being so in people's like cultural memory about Iraq and understanding that that's like what that was about. I was shocked to see not all Democrats, but some Democrats, even Kamala Harris, who the rest of her statement was not good, but saying it's about the oil, because that shows that they've poll tested that. You don't have politicians like her saying things off the cuff if they don't have Democratic research behind it. You had Pat Ryan, who's in a more purple district, saying it's about the oil, and other Democrats you wouldn't expect using that messaging. I would love if that translated into policy changes, but to your point, Brandon, there just isn't the popular support for this kind of action because of that, and because we haven't experienced a 9/11 that allowed for many people in the population to voluntarily kind of give up their rights. And at the time after 9/11, Bush's approval was like through the roof, and it waned very quickly, but they used that to start an illegal war in Iraq for that purpose.
Well, that's why they're trying to make the drug epidemic, the fentanyl and like prescription opioid epidemic like the 9/11. That's why you've seen a lot of these like statements from Trump officials and right-wing media figures about their parents dying from like drug overdose, insinuating that it's any way related to Venezuela when it's like opioids, it's like Sackler related drug overdoses. Because if you could sum up opposition to the war in Iraq in one phrase, it would be no blood for oil. That was everywhere. People remember that. And a lot of these Democrats also remember that Barack Obama distinguished himself in the 2008 presidential primary by saying, no, I'm the one who's not in favor of this. He didn't even vote for it.
You know who else did in their Republican primary? In 2016, Donald Trump.
Iraq war was a big fat mistake.
Yep. It was a big failure. It was a big failure. That was the thing that like distinguished him. That was one of the things on stage where he said that money would have been better off spent at home, taking care of your family, taking care of your roads. And people cheered for it. And it was the first time they had heard anything like that, not just in the Republican Party, really, but in mainstream American politics altogether, because so many Democrats were implicated in that like decision to lead up to the war.
Exactly.
Hillary was touting Henry Kissinger's endorsement.
Yep. I mean, truly, I've said this show, I've said this anecdote many times, but that, you know, that was why I got into politics, was my opposition to the Iraq war and seeing this, you know, young, charismatic Obama on stage. At least, you know, he wasn't in Congress at the time to vote for it, but he stood in opposition to it as like a political tactic with Hillary Clinton. And he was effective at that. And that was why, in many ways we all got swept up in that to a degree, or at least I'll speak for myself. I did as a kid. And so, I think that the era of saying that people don't vote on foreign policy is over, especially because I think people have an intrinsic understanding of like what resources.
It's always been a
mean.
lie.
It has been a lie. I mean, because it's also, but you can make a material case about it too. But that
people
drives
look at polls
me crazy.
and say all sorts of dumb shit. The history is clear about this, and it's always been clear that even in fucking Vietnam, Hubert Humphrey gained a massive polling advantage, almost closing enough to win against Nixon after he broke with LBJ. And then there's this the idea that people don't care. Well, they don't care enough to overthrow George Bush when he does an illegal war. But people were all in the fucking streets about it. The problem is money has captured our political system, so it doesn't matter that people care about it. Like, that's the thing that somebody mentioned, like, do you go to protests? Like, protests happen in this country. People have been going to fucking protests. The point is we need to grab power. Yeah. Because, like, it doesn't matter that people are just against stuff.
Some of that, like, people don't care about foreign policy stuff has been like a self-fulfilling prophecy, something that people have been told to justify like bad foreign policy from Democrats. Like this idea that foreign policy is too arcane, it's too like hard for you to understand, it doesn't affect you at home. Because ultimately, if people didn't vote based on foreign policy, Barack Obama wouldn't have gone out of his way to make the drone warfare we engaged in so secretive. There wouldn't be so much work to engage in the kind of shadow wars that we engage in, not just because like they're illegal at the international stage, but because they would be unpopular if people understood how much money we spent and how, not only that, how dangerous it makes it around the world to engage in these kinds of policies. So the idea that foreign policy doesn't matter, I think, is like wrong. It's just that neither party in a vacuum wants to make foreign policy an issue because they largely agree across the broad strokes of what Americans' foreign policy position should be. It's only over some things do they disagree over tactics. Like even with a lot of the responses to Trump, it's been about like how he did it, how he didn't go through the procedural channels, how he didn't like ask the right people, how sloppy it is because he doesn't have like an actual regime change going. He's just like leaning on them publicly. But they like that it happened. They like that it has access. They like that they have access to Venezuela now, and they'll make do with that.
I mean, this is like what we're talking about here. This is we showed this a little bit earlier, but like Rubio and Schumer hugging it up yesterday, like right after or in the immediate few minutes after Schumer was doing a presser.
I think it was a day after.
A day after, but he was asked for comment on Venezuela yesterday too, and so he goes out there and Marco Rubio hugs him in the middle of the press pool as, I mean.
Remember this from term one?
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
Like, there's a conspiracy that all these guys are part of and it's against you. And Democrats should start calling for Chuck Schumer's head more often.
Oh, yeah.
Especially candidates in this primary. He needs to be removed from leadership, and for these reasons.
Okay, let's take a really quick call and last call of the day here, calling from a 612 area code. Who's this? Where are you calling from?
Hello?
Hello. Who's this? Where are you calling from?
My name is Jacob. I'm originally from Minneapolis, but I'm calling from Quincy, Mass.
Okay. Jacob, what's on your mind?
Well, I don't recall if you guys had talked about it much. I know there's like a lot of crazy stuff going on, definitely more important. But, I think Walls, he announced he wasn't seeking a third term. And there was a lot of like back and forth about, is he doing this in response to the Jacob Shirley BS, or was there, was he worried about kind of the increasing rhetoric against him and stuff? But I think now that he's kind of liberated himself from having to worry about running for a third term, I think, there's a chance that he could get a lot more aggressive with, especially considering what has just happened in Minneapolis with ICE. I don't know if you guys have the same opinion of that or not, but personally, some people were mad that he wasn't running again for a third term, but honestly, I think it was the right decision, not because I think like any of these fraud things are legitimate or anything like that, but I think, remembering back to like when Dayton was governor, him not running again, Walz joining in, and getting elected, there were so many things that got passed, even though it was 2 Democratic administrations, incredibly, we got a lot accomplished, like legalized marijuana, paid parental leave, free school lunches.
Right.
And I think if we manage to get another Democrat in for 8 years, there's probably things that we're not even thinking about right now. Just having kind of a fresh set of eyes, a younger candidate who has kind of been raised in a different environment than Walz. Walz got elected in 2006.
Yeah.
Minnesota.
Unfortunately, Walz has shown some weakness that, doesn't mean that he's not a good guy. Like, I do think that. But fundamentally, he's shown weakness across this past year, both as a VP and in the way that he, that performance was really bad against J.D. Vance and helped normalize him. Also just in his kind of inability right now to stand up to these racist lies by the Trump administration. And let alone the not embracing the Omar Fateh kind of
endorsed Fry, as far as Trump being lame duck, it cuts both ways. It's true that some of the best things Obama did was in the Cuba opening was in his second term, where you don't have to worry about that, and you do have to think about that with Trump. But there was a utility to Steve Bannon, etc., acting as if Trump was going to be king forever, and it stops anyone from preparing for the post-Trump future. And I think the hope is that eventually, and if the Democrats can perform well in the midterms, despite being really hated as a party right now, that the rats will start looking for their places to land once that becomes more and more closer to an inevitability that Trump's going to be out.
Yeah, and I think, personally, back in 2018, I was in favor. I didn't vote for him in the primary. I still was pleasantly surprised with some of the stuff he got. I feel like when he did tack left, I think that was when he experienced his most success. I wish he had done it more.
Yeah,
but,
that's why he was packageable for a vice presidency, and then they immediately decided to burn it down into the ground. Even though, if you look closer, he was also the one who stopped the rideshare minimum rate from
the
stopping.
pipeline through indigenous lands. Yeah.
So.
I had family that. I'm not indigenous, but the workers, they were in the town where my family was while they were working on it, and then it proceeded to flood. I don't know exactly the amount of time after, but it was flooding water, and it caused a lot of damage and pissed quite a few people off, even though they were in favor of it to begin with, which is very frustrating.
Robin Wansley has talked about this is why they're going to form a DSA caucus explicitly, so people know there's a lot of progressive stuff happening in Minneapolis. Why is that happening? It's not because of the guy at the top. It's because of all the, frankly, socialists and progressive Democrats that are beneath them.
And I just think a younger person, I think the DFL does have a pretty deep bench. I think they can find someone, and also considering the opponents, it's, Deltmouth or Lindell, and
yep.
It's just, I think that, if they get a younger person in there that kind of came of age more in the age of Trump, and they know how to be more ruthless with this, I don't know. But sorry, I'm just rambling.
No. We're in agreement for sure.
I just think, some people were freaking out and thinking it was apocalyptic, or that it was conceding something. But it's just, you can be the greatest governor ever, not saying that he was, but your stank is in the governor's mansion after 8 years, and everything good, everything bad will be attributed to you, regardless if you deserve it or not. And it's good to just kind of let someone new in that doesn't have 8 years of oppo, that the GOP can throw at you.
Appreciate the call. Agreed on your assessment. Thank you. All right, guys, that's it for calls. We will do maybe another clip and then read some IMs. I'll read some IMs while we kind of decide. Maybe, Matt, you can look at it. I don't know. What do we have? Or should we do this Dokeful thing, or is it stupid?
At this point, I don't think it's
okay, it's not worth it. Oh, well, I mean, we could do, honestly, not like to end on a happier note, we could do 9 and 11 about like what an actual response to this looks like.
On a happier note, we can end on 9/11.
That's going to be put in my file, my domestic terrorism file. So we've talked a lot about how the Democratic Party's leadership has been a fascist enabling collaborationist, not meeting the moment in many ways, but we have a insurgent kind of progressive candidate crop, politician crop that is messaging on this the right way. And they are actually, I do think, pushing some of the other more centrist or like center of the party, I should say, more Democrats to speak in ways like saying this Venezuela invasion is about the oil. You have Bill Kristol, who used to be a Republican, talking about how we should abolish ICE. And I know he's not a lawmaker, but
should be in jail.
The conversation is changing a bit. AOC is obviously the besides Bernie Sanders and Zoran Mamdani right now, like they're the three most important kind of or visible left-wing leaders right now in terms of who are elected to higher office at the moment. And this was her statement on the killing of the murder of Renee Good by an ICE agent in Minneapolis yesterday.
ICE shooting. What happens if the mayor wants ICE out? So does the governor, the senators. What if ICE doesn't leave Minneapolis? What are the implications of that?
Well, first of all, what happened and what we saw today was a horrific act of violence. And, you know, my heart goes out to the victim's family of this. You know, I think what we have now seen and what we are seeing is that ICE is not just becoming an anti-immigrant force in this country, it is becoming an anti-civilian paramilitary organization. People are getting taken off of the streets for exercising their free speech rights. The president himself has asserted that, in fact, one of the reasons that this murder may have been quote unquote justified is on free speech grounds. So this is now turned into what our greatest fear is and has been for a long time around ICE, that this will be used as an anti-civilian force, that it has no accountability. At the end of the day, what we saw today is a murder. And murders in cold blood need to be prosecuted. And we've seen what happened to this woman I believe it was just a few blocks away from where George Floyd was murdered. And what we need to see is this incident prosecuted. What we saw today was a criminal murder a woman and shoot her in the head while she was trying to escape and flee.
Yep. The anti-civilian force part, I think, is key here, and referring to them as a paramilitary organization is absolutely accurate. Graham Plattner this morning, or is this the social media video? Okay, this is a different one. This is him. He went on MS Now's Morning Joe and said some very similar things.
Let's just remember that this inevitability was the point. When you develop a law enforcement or a security organization, like we have done with ICE, certainly over the past year, where we have expanded numbers, we have brought in people who, quite frankly, are unqualified, given them short and in many ways clearly very poor training and an inability to handle stressful situations. This is not surprising. And the people that built this apparatus, they knew that this was coming, because the point of this, the point of ICE's operations over the past half year, really, it has nothing to do with creating safety in American communities. It has everything to do with terrorizing communities and using this kind of, frankly, state violence as a mechanism of cowing political opponents. That was the point. That's why we did that. I mean, this is not, I don't mean to be flippant here, but It does not take a rocket scientist to see where this was going.
It's helpful to have him, speak in those terms. Like we've said that the left needs to become a little bit more conspiratorial, or maybe I've said that and it's not the best way to phrase it. It's more just like genuinely critical of the state. Like for too long, leadership has been, because they're more there as like stewards, and Sam would use the term concierge for Schumer, but they're maintenance people for a system that is not working anymore. That's their role. They are not speaking about state power in those terms and how it actually impacts people. And it's impactful because it means that you're positioning yourself as a critic of a government that is completely dysfunctional at this point.
Everyone's familiar with the chart of the GDP growth and productivity basically decoupling with wage growth since the 80s. That's a result of a conspiracy.
Yeah.
That didn't happen on accident. It's the people that run capitalism decided we're going to juice this thing for us. Not only we can raise productivity without giving you any raises, and you'll just take it. All this stuff, and so for the entirety of my life, that richer have made me richer, and have been preparing for the day that people are going to get sick of it and realize, hey, why can't I buy a fucking house? Why can't my kid get an education? Why can't I afford anything? Well, we're going to do what the Nazis did and blame an outgroup that we can demonize. And it's disgusting to me how many Americans have fallen for something that we all fucking read about in the history books. Yep. It's just the same playbook. And everybody who subscribed to the Tren de Aragua stuff or the anti-trans stuff was just doing what Nazis did in the 30s.
But American education treats Nazism as an anomaly and as the Americans as the good guys in the face of it, which is ahistorical.
Yeah. I mean, what companies were fueling the planes that Francisco Franco got from Hitler in the 30s in the Spanish Civil War? It was Texaco.
Yep. Swift Spino Wire says the left needs to become more skeptical. Yeah. I mean, and maybe not the left, I would say, but democratic messaging needs to become more, critical and skeptical of government power. Go on, Brandon.
Scientific too, scientific and conspiratorial, which is how I would say. I think there's too many skeptics say well, there's no such thing as any kind of conspiracy. Guess what? Abraham Lincoln was killed by a conspiracy, and it wasn't a lone shooter.
I was just going to say, I think, all your points are well made. And it just comes down to the fact that for a decent point of my life, the Democratic Party's main claim to fame for what their value is institutional legitimacy. We're here to legitimize all of the things you've heard about that make America great, like the parliament, Congress, the presidency, law enforcement. So they rely a lot on that institutional legitimacy, but they don't do the work to maintain the sanctity of it. They oftentimes allow for them to be deregulated, made weaker by public-private partnerships, corrupted by money. And so the responsibility for maintaining the illusion that these institutions serve people are foisted onto the people who care about them and know that they are important. And so I think a lot of the liberal base in this country are held hostage by Democrats too when it comes to pretending they don't notice that there's anything wrong about some of these things, or thinking that it's just a matter of swapping out leadership. Some people do believe that, genuinely, but I think a lot more people hold on to this idea that if you criticize institutions that are already being weakened too much, you're just empowering the far right. And all that actually does is empower the far right, because it means that the first time anyone hears about the failures of the Iraq war in detail, or the failures of any of these institutions, it's going to be from a right-wing demagogue who's going to turn that criticism of these institutions that resonate with people because they can see how corrupt they are in one form or another into authoritarian or reactionary prescription for what will solve it, which is what Trump did. And so it's incumbent upon people to criticize these institutions for what is wrong with them, which is that they've been captured by special interest money, not by a cabal of minorities or a shadowy deep state comprised of Jewish people and trans people and leftist leftist authoritarian professors or like scolds, but by the people you see on television every day, the CEOs that you see on television every day, that you see on the cover of the newspaper. And it benefits them to pretend like that's, what's actually happening. Those are the wrong kinds of conspiracies, the ones that displace those people with like the Illuminati or the, Bilderberg group in a vacuum.
Exactly right. Ryan from Rochester, the American experiment is closer to its end than we think. The cost of belonging to the federal union is going up and the benefits are being cut. When the ratio gets depleted, the union will dissolve. Well, I don't know. We'll see. I understand, though, it's very difficult to see a way out of this at this moment. Charlie Sheeher, I remember in high school during our World War II lessons, there was a lot of talk about how something like this could happen. The last 10 years has given me that answer quite quickly. Todd from Raleigh, the Candace-Shapiro divide is a battle for who gets the money to be the vehicle for the same enemy, the fascist class. The feud is an opportunity for us to mock them and do some minor sabotage, but whichever side wins is irrelevant to working people. Exactly. Well said,
Yeah, exactly.
Todd. Well said.
I hope they do extensive amount of damage on either side.
John from G-Bird says, can't wait for the no context majority report to clip Emma saying, to end on a positive note, we should do 9/11. TPUS Ailman says, Walls has already demonstrated he won't be more aggressive. Reed Marx and Lennon says it would cost an estimated 10 to 30 billion a year to end homelessness in America. Apparently we can't afford that because another 500 billion to the military for defense contractors and weapons manufacturers is no problem. Every day I feel like Mugatu in Zoolander when he screams. I feel like I'm taking crazy pills.
That's always been the truth about the military budget. It should have raised the alarm bells in the fucking 90s when the USSR fell, and we're like, oh yeah, we're gonna keep rolling this stuff out.
Yeah.
I mean, I think the more radicalizing truth is that we could actually do both. We could still do the imperialism and give every American homes. They just don't want to do that. They hate you because you're poor. Like, that's something that I think people get like obscure when they talk about the tax cuts paying for, like, rather the cuts to public sector paying for the tax cuts. We could probably do both. I mean, would it cause there to be a deficit? Maybe, but the Republicans don't give a crap about that. It's just they hate you because you're poor. It's not about balancing a budget or anything or some kind of like, callous calculation. They want to punish people because they're poor. They want to punish people because they're like trans or black. There's like, that's part of the ideology. It's a whole ranking and hierarchical system that ascribes values to you based on how much you make. And so they hate you because you don't make enough.
Yep. Seder Hardly Know Her says, Matt's Death of the American Dream comment is almost word for word how Thompson wrote about police violence from the Chicago DNC convention in 1968.
Oh, Hunter S. Thompson. Well, I've read Hunter S. Thompson, so maybe.
Yeah. Well, I mean, I don't think they're accusing you of plagiarism, just more like, we're looking at history and...
Ta-Nehisi Coates said kind of what I was trying to say really succinctly when he's like, the Democratic Party, but you could swap any institution out for this. If you can't draw the line at genocide and you're like sort of both sides and looking at it as if it's a foggy question, then you cannot draw the line at democracy here or, your neighbor getting assassinated and them calling her a terrorist. It's this... nothing separates you from the Palestinians.
Yep. All right, 5 more. Jack from Minnesota Star Tribune reporting that ICE officers identified. Okay.
Good.
Oh, you did? We'll check it out later. Fabulash, if a party loses, shouldn't the leaders of the losing party be replaced? Well, that's how it's done in parliamentary systems.
That's what Jayapal thought, but apparently none of the other ones.
Yeah. ESPN Truther, Emma, do you have any NFL wildcard round picks? I'm sure. Yes, I do. I mean, I'll just shorten it by saying like I'm thinking Hawks, Rams, NFC Championship, and out of the AFC, I'm thinking. God, can they meet up in the AFC Championship? That would have to require a lower seed winning in the NFC. I would need to think about it more, but I feel really good about the Hawks and the Rams in the NFC. Although, and I'm predicting some upsets. I think in that round, like the Panthers shouldn't be there. I'm curious what the spread is on that, by the way. But the AFC is so weak. Like, my dark horse is the Texans. Like, they remind me of the Giants of 2007, 2008. Although they don't have the offensive line. That's the one question. But like in terms of like, when a defense can take over, maybe we go Jags. We do 2 divisional championship games. Jags Texans. Who knows if that's how that can work out with the bracket? But off the top of my head, that's what I'm going with.
Rams are favored by 10.5.
10.5. I might even take that. Chris Burdick, I demand you release a proof of life video of Binder holding up today's newspaper. Binder is fine. Don't worry about it. And the final... Yeah. That sounds like I'm lying, but I'm not.
Well, he did want me to say, he wanted me to tell everybody that he's at CES and you can check out his coverage of the Consumer Electronic show on Mashable.
Great. Okay, awesome. 2 more. Illuminati kids, Brandon is so wrong and needs to get fucking granular. Homelessness is because of onerous air filter requirements.
It's true.
And
That's what HVAC guys always telling me.
Yep. Well, also the abundance guys. And the final I am of the day. Nicola, we need a left that's educated on history and whose analysis is materialist versus moralistic or culturalist. Don't be a Marxist if you don't wanna, but that analysis just brings more charity on these things. I think you meant to say clarity. Conspiracy happens. Agree, Nicola. All right, guys. Appreciate you all. Thank you so much. We will see you tomorrow.
It might take all the strength I got to get to where I want, but I know somehow I'm gonna get there. I wasn't looking when I just got caught between the truth and the lie.